The state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news.
2020, 29, 30, 31, and we are done. Moving to November.
There's a song about November.
I'll be gone till November.
That's the one I was thinking about.
I'll be gone till November.
That's a song.
Yeah,
a
by
song.
Wyclef.
Jean.
And nothing by Pepe Kale.
It's on by Niboma.
My God. Yes.
Or Musa Juma, for that matter. Or Kamaru.
No.
Okay.
How you doing though, City Muga?
I am very well, thank you.
Good to see you this morning.
Sana ndugu. Niko mzima, nashukuru. And how are you this morning, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, lovely rainy morning in Nairobi. But there was a sudden burst of showers a couple of minutes ago along Mombasa Road. Now you've got to say where, because you may find that in South Sea they have no idea what you're talking about. It's raining where?
What is interesting with rain is how we respond to rain in this town. We don't like rain. We run away from it.
Yeah,
And we run away really fast if it suddenly appears in the afternoon.
True.
yeah.
Because one moment you'll have empty streets, it starts raining, suddenly the streets are full. It's like people need to drive away from it.
Because you know what it means.
Eric, tell me, what does it mean?
Rain means, first of all, if you're walking, that you're going to be drenched.
For
Secondly, if you're driving, you just know that when rain starts, roads get clogged up, traffic jam builds up. So you are trying to get off before
And in so
all that
doing,
happens.
you contribute to the jam.
You do that, yes. But you always hope that you're the one that just passes right before. See, like in the movies, that car that just passes before the bridge collapses.
Or just before the traffic lights change.
Before the traffic lights change.
Okay.
That's the one. So
That's the one.
you hope to be that one.
Okay, and if there are 10 of you thinking that way, then what do you think?
You
there
still
will
hope to be the one.
And there'll be 10 of you thinking
Number
exactly
one of
the same
10.
thing. Number one out of 10.
Yes.
Okay. Then you find you are actually not 10, you are 30.
Yes. If you find yourself at number 30 out of 30, then it's a game of chance. You're just like, okay, too bad. Ndu,
Yes.
good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Why are you sulking?
Huh?
Why are you sulking?
I'm not sulking. Why would I be sulking? It's a rainy day after all.
I think that is the reason why he commented, because he wants to find out why you're sulking.
Does this look like the face of a woman who's sulking?
I know a trick question.
You can smell it. You can see it from a mile away.
Do I look higher? How am I supposed to understand such things?
Plain.
I'm a simple man who understands simple things.
I'm not sulking, I beg. I'm fine.
Okay. Sawa, we believe you.
How are you guys?
We're fine, thank you.
Super duper.
Yeah, good to see you. Welcome to the show, everybody. We'll be discussing a number of things today. One, remember a couple of weeks ago, there was ranking for members of parliament across all the 290 constituencies. Now we have ranking of governors in all the 47 counties. Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya is number one in the country, 88.2% ranking, according to this new scorecard by the same polling company, Infotrack Research. We'll be discussing that at some point. Then, is Kenya's economy in a recession, heading towards a recession, or is Kenya's economy just floating by smoothly. It's a conversation that we'll also be raising this morning. And the other one is, do we have a property bubble burst in our economy? So, yeah, people have talked about this many times. Oh, you see now, this bubble has burst. Well, we'll be asking ourselves that question deeply. Do we have a property bubble burst?
Eric, try that again, please.
Okay. Take a step back.
Do you have a
breathe in
property
and out.
bubble burst?
My goodness. The alliteration are really doing
I'm telling you,
a
it's doing your
jig and
thing on
jag and a
you.
musical
Let's just go with the
throwing.
same, Nini. Property bubble burst.
All right.
It's
No, you
easier.
don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that one we've got it.
It's all right.
If you don't get it, okay, you will not get it. Yeah, so, and then the president has asked governors to meet with him next week to discuss the surge in COVID-19 cases. So, we still see numbers rising, not just in Kenya, but around the world. So let's begin, as we always do, with tracking those numbers. Where are we today?
Okay, so high numbers that have been recorded in the country, and that's what we will start with this morning. 1,018 new cases in Kenya as of yesterday, and we saw this then come alongside the announcement of this extraordinary session of the COVID summit, and high cases, rather high numbers. And it seems that there's an average now of about 850 cases per day, if the mean can be taken from the last week. All right. Many things are being said at the same time. Counties shut down as cases increase. Shutting down their offices. County assemblies are shutting down their offices. Kakamega became the latest county to close down after Governor Oparanya ordered county headquarters offices closed for the next 7 days. The same thing had happened in a number of other counties. The numbers rise, and they're now having to call for control in terms of the spread of the disease. We had seen the same thing happen in Wasungishu, Bungoma, Kilifi, and this seems to be happening around the country, with Kakamega being the latest, with high numbers of cases having been recorded in the county assembly as well as county offices. Okay, so we're looking at high numbers coming out. If we look at the rest of the world, we are now at 44,748,874. The United States now at 9 million cases, 9.1 million. And India at 8,038,755. Let's look at the numbers that India brought in yesterday. 49,912 new cases with 509 deaths. This is half the number of cases that they found on a day like this last week. So the numbers of infections are reducing. However, interestingly enough, the numbers of deaths are increasing. And these deaths are from cases that were in hospital over the last 10 days to 2 weeks. All right. So it's not that people are arriving at hospital and a few days later they're dying, but that people's conditions have been exacerbated and then they're not able to hold on any longer. These are the reports that we are getting. Looking at other countries as well: Brazil, Russia, France, Spain, Argentina, Colombia, and the United Kingdom, as well as Mexico, make up the top 10 of countries with the highest coronavirus cases. All of these countries have 900,000 cases and above. So the top 10 countries in the world with cases, all presenting with high numbers in terms of...
when you look at our numbers, for instance, you're thinking of, we are 1,000 cases?
In a day, yeah.
France has hit 50,000.
Sure, yes. This is the reason why their president said, look, we're going to have a meeting, and that meeting is took place yesterday.
50,000 confirmed cases in a day.
A day.
Out of a sample of how many?
As in, how many people were tested? No, they don't give details of those who are tested. They simply say that with the testing that they have done, these are the numbers that are coming out on a daily basis. Yes. One can only assume that whatever testing they've been doing it's not that they've increased it, but what they're seeing is that more people are testing positive. And to further support that particular perspective is that their healthcare system has actually been overrun.
Already.
Literally overrun. They're trying to increase more ICU beds, but they are literally full to capacity, and health workers who tested positively for COVID, but feel strong enough are being told to report back to work, only maintaining social distance. Yes. Germany has also taken similar measures, though their numbers are really not daunting, but they've decided they're not waiting for the numbers to get
They're
to
not
the
waiting
point.
for them to get terrible.
No,
They're saying we're
no.
shutting this thing down
Yes,
now.
yes.
So,
Spain is doing the same thing. Yes.
So the world is going through that second wave,
The world is
clearly
going
and
to...
surely.
What is truly, truly alarming is the numbers. The numbers are alarming.
This time, the virus is basically properly spread in the community.
The virus isn't joking.
Yeah, it's now properly spread in the community, so now that's what is emerging. Same thing in the country. If you look at the numbers that we are seeing now, a high positivity rate, it tells you that out of every 10 people, almost 3 will have COVID. And that's a high positivity rate. That tells you that the thing is right there in the community, properly spreading. The capacity of our healthcare system then to handle it is where the issue would be. How many are symptomatic? How many are asymptomatic? How many of those that are symptomatic require intensive attention in hospital?
Actually, if you look at even our cases, what is alarming is not just people who are exhibiting mild signs. No. But it's the number of people who have extreme symptoms and people who need, should we say,
Intensive care.
yes, that is what is alarming and that is what is stretching the health system. If, for instance, we're talking about the Aga Khan hospitals now wanting to have field hospitals, okay?
Yeah.
Bagathi actually built
They
one.
complete theirs, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
Aga Khan actually did their field hospital a long time ago. I think they're just expanding another one. And there are some indications. Remember, Nairobi Hospital got into a partnership with an organization, the
the
UN,
United Nations.
was the
yeah.
UN.
right?
Yeah.
So it could also be similar because Aga Khan has its field hospital already. Then they announced this, I think,
A
in
while
March
back.
or in May.
Yes.
There's a new one that has been put up. It could be an extension with organization that has, or a group of organizations that have said, we want our staff, if they fall sick, you.
You see, Nairobi
them
Hospital
in
was
this
actually
particular-
putting up a building, brick and mortar and steel. But they had given a very short time space. If you pass by, you'll actually see the building has...
Coming up, huh?
Oh, not just coming up. It's actually reached the level of the roof. It's been coming up steadily but very, very fast. Now, one would have hoped that the example of field hospital would have been taken because it is quicker.
Yeah.
And this was said, we were saying this in February, March. Because there were countries who were doing it and it was serving the purpose.
Sure.
You'd rather have them and then have them empty, but they're there.
But they are there.
Yes,
Machakos County did theirs a long
they did.
time ago.
They did. They did.
And then, of course, you can imagine the staff working there thinking, all right, so we have this thing. It has 100-bed capacity. We don't have people here. So people start, again, slackening. But the good thing is that it's
there. You see, when
there.
it's put up, it's there. Like the ICU units, even before COVID, they were always there. But most times you didn't have people in it. You probably had 1 person, 2 people.
They were ready.
Yeah,
were
but
ready to
they
use
were there.
this. Yeah,
Yep.
for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. We'll observe what happens, and we'll be looking at the headlines pertaining to COVID-19 as well, what's been written in the papers this morning. But for now, let's take a break and see what's happening with the rain in parts of Nairobi and whether this is also happening in other parts of the country and other parts of Africa and the world. Good morning. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The live stream is up. Remember that. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and spicefm.co.ke. It's coming up to 6:15.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmster, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth.
Who doesn't love fuel that's good for your car engine and your pocket? Ola Energy cares about your car engine so much it has introduced Optimium fuels with additives that clean your engine and improve fuel economy at no extra cost, which enhances your engine's performance for a smoother ride for you and your pocket. Monique is away this week, so join me, Emmanuel Kisingani, on the Spice Drive from Monday to Friday to learn more about Optimium fuels and also stand a chance to win free fuel vouchers. Optimize your engine today with Optimium fuels from Ola Energy.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Yeah, the
The
rain is coming
weather
down in Nairobi
with-
this morning. We're looking at those cloudy conditions and rain throughout most parts of the morning. We'll see a high of 22 today and lows of 14. Nakuru is mostly cloudy at 15, highs of 21 and lows of 13. Thunderstorms are also in the forecast there. The rain is also coming down in Nyeri. There's 16 degrees at the moment, and it looks like it's going to rain well into Friday and into the weekend in Nyeri. And it's mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 13, highs of 20 and lows of 13. Thunderstorms also expected to come through there, as is the case in Kisumu. It's mostly cloudy at 20. We'll see a high of 26. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kakamega will lead to rain later with highs of 23 and lows of 16. It's also mostly cloudy in Mombasa at the moment and looking at rain for later parts of the afternoon. And thunderstorms are in the forecast with highs of 29 and lows of 25. It's partly cloudy in Malindi at 27, highs of 29 and lows of 24. Mostly cloudy in Kampala as we step out of Kenya. Thunderstorms are also forecasted for later with highs of 23 and lows of 19. It's partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 24, highs of 31 and lows of 23. The clouds of the election seem to be passing. We can see what it looks like later. In Johannesburg, it's clear at 17. It's warming up today to a high of 29. Sunny conditions all through and coming down to a low of 15. All right, let's take a look into Lagos, where it's clear at 26 degrees and looking like only partly cloudy conditions throughout today with highs of 31 and lows of 24. Beijing is mostly sunny at 13, highs of 18 and coming down to a chilly low of 2. In Paris, mostly cloudy conditions at 11. Cloudy conditions through parts of the afternoon with highs of 16 and lows of 11. It's partly cloudy in London for the moment. Going to rain showers later with highs of 15 and lows of 9. And we'll take a final look into New York, where at 14 degrees, it's clear skies with a few clouds here and there, but will turn into showers later with highs of 17 and lows of 12.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Eric Latif, Nduoko, City Muga in the house. Live streaming on spicefm.co.ke. Say hello to our troops this morning.
Sure, Dorcas Kimotho is awake this morning. Tund Kamakawa. Leban Kapte Tanui, good morning to you too. Sam Githinji is tuning from Mombasa, Josham Hospital, Niki Pambana na hali yangu. Okay, fantastic. George Odwor Olex tuned in. Good morning. And so is Moses Kashari. David Neto is up and awake this morning in Meru, Inaskiza. Meru, Inaskiza. David and Meru, Wanaskiza.
What?
Wote.
Okay.
Meru mzima.
Ikondani.
There you go.
All right.
Morning, guys.
Good morning to you all. City, as we begin, before we look at the headlines, what is today's proverb?
Today's proverb, when a brother fights a brother to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
When a brother fights a brother
To the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
Okay.
Okay. So make sure you don't both die.
Well, The way it works out is,
Kill one.
That when you fight to the death, that both of you are dying.
well, yes, but also according to this
Just
particular
kill
proverb, you need to have a brother first.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start. All right.
It's important, and
Okay.
you also have to be the brother of that brother. Yes,
And there has to be an estate.
there has to be an estate. There always is an estate,
Okay.
even if it's a pile of debts.
It's something
It's something.
that you inherit from your folks. Let's look at the headlines. Where do you want to start?
Okay. Red alert as COVID cases surge. Uhuru calls talks. It's decision time for leaders as coronavirus infections continue to rise across the country, with counties forced to suspend key operations and students and teachers testing positive for the virus. Now, you want to look at the many stories surrounding this today, and I think we'll look at as many as we can. So, the president has convened a meeting to deliberate the country's COVID-19 situation in the wake of increasing deaths and positive cases. The meeting, which will take place on the 4th of November, is the 6th extraordinary session of the national and county government's coordinating summit. This session, compared to the previous ones during the pandemic, comes earlier than what has been the tradition. The president has been convening these meetings barely hours to the expiry of the imposed containment measures. As per his last address on September 28th, such a meeting was expected around November 28th, considering the curfew hours had been reviewed and extended by another 60 days. In the statement from State House spokesperson Kanze Dena, it was noted that the high numbers were the reason for the meeting. So earlier than usual, because look, we've got to address this thing, right?
Yeah.
So what the statement reads was that the extraordinary session has been convened in light of the resurgence of COVID-19 infections across the nation, as exhibited by the fact that Kenya's recorded its highest number of COVID-19 cases and rather monthly fatalities in October 2020. So far, our country has lost 239 people to the virus between October 1st and 28th.
Imagine.
239 people in 28 days have
Just
died.
remember at the beginning of the month, we were talking about, okay, we are still at 700, right?
Right.
And we were comparing to other countries that have thousands of people being reported dead per day. And now here we are.
So in 28 days, almost 250 people. Quite something. So the COVID situation, as we're looking at it now, since the country reopened on the 28th, a total of 13,736 people have tested positive, an average of 457 new cases in a day. This is 26.4% of all the confirmed cases in just a month, yet the virus has been in the country for 7 months.
Yeah.
Since the reopening of the economy, the number of fatalities stands at 259. So since the economy opened, one shy of 260 people have died.
It is a big one. So we're seeing rising virus cases jolting county bosses. And this one is talking about Nyanza and Western governors who are unveiling new measures to curb the spread. Governor Professor Anyang' Nyong'o of Kisumu, Governor Oparanya of Kakamega, directed law enforcers yesterday to crack down on residents acting recklessly in public places. In Vihiga, which is bordering the two, the county secretary announced suspension of gatherings of more than 5 people, banned live interviews at Vihiga FM following the upsurge of COVID-19 cases. In Homa Bay, rural health facilities are in a crisis after the executive sent nurses to the county referral hospital. So they have transferred workers from rural health facilities to the main referral hospital of the county to boost the capacity there. A number of primary healthcare facilities are therefore understaffed, leaving long queues with most patients forced to seek services from hospitals located far away from their homes. An example is Kaduogo Dispensary in Homa Bay Town West and Kokwanyo Dispensary in Rachonyo East. Those affected. Homa Bay Chief Officer of Health, Gerald Akeche, said his office is aware of the crisis and the transfer was essential for managing COVID-19. We are trying to streamline posting of nurses. So this is what they're dealing with. In Kakamega, 316 cases of COVID-19 have been reported since June, 57 of them being healthcare workers. So now they're saying, enforce these measures strictly. Let's see what we can do. But remember, just over the weekend, Kisumu was host to a big rally addressed by the top leadership of the country.
And we did say there'll be consequences.
Yep. So if you now imagine that that happened over the weekend and now police come and tell you, oh, you cannot gather, oh, you must wear a mask. People are like,
What are you talking about? Just 3 days yonder. Or behind.
what is this that you're
This is
saying?
what was going on.
What is
What are you
this?
saying?
Nasema nini? The Nation also has a story on page 10 that says the economy or health, Kenya's COVID-19 dilemma. New daily infections are now averaging 1,000 and the positivity rate stands at 14%, which is almost 3 times the WHO recommended level of 5%. The country has recorded 12,000 new infections this month alone. And this is just when the economy is starting to breathe again after the first lockdown sent it to its knees. A possible second shutdown or escalation of movement restrictions is on the cards. When the governors and the president have a conversation next week, one of the things, of course, that they may discuss is as we boost our capacity to respond to this in the healthcare system, what can we do to reduce its spread? And this would have to maybe come up with some enforcement measures of reducing movement, of curfew hours and the rest. Would that bear fruit? Would it be taking us back to that point in the economy where people really, really suffered just when you're starting to breathe?
I don't know, but I read that statement yesterday, and at the very end of that statement came that, the call was upon Kenyans to really make sure that they're adhering to these measures in order to stop any kind of regressive retrogression when it came to, the steps that had been taken for the economy. So it was almost like imploring Kenyans, please take care of yourselves so that we don't have to take steps back. We've made positive steps in terms of actually trying to get back to the way things were.
Yeah.
If we go back, it's almost like I'll be left with no choice but to shut down the country. So that's what we saw.
It's true. Well, the fact of the matter is that this is something that you must do yourself. You must take care. You must make sure that you're observing these measures as much as possible. Reduce interactions, public interactions as much as possible. Make sure that you're wearing a mask whenever you're in public as much as possible. Make sure that you're washing your hands and sanitizing as often as possible. These are all things that you must do personally. But there's a role of government in leadership, in providing that leadership.
There is.
And especially those in leadership to do that. And when they appear to blatantly disregard those measures, then they send that message, just like what Dr. Moses Masika was saying. It's how we are messaging, how we are framing the message. Say this, but do this.
Right. I mean, it was so interesting because, and I need to find that paper, but I believe it was the Monday paper because on page 3, there was the picture of huge crowds, right? And on page 4, there was then the Cabinet Secretary of Health behind the podium, essentially asking Kenyans to
Stop dancing in Jerusalem.
I mean, one page to the next, and I was like, oh, really? The ironies. What is this? And that's the picture that Kenyans are looking at, and they say, "What? You're telling us not? But look at this.
Yep.
You want us to come out and listen to you in your campaign rallies and such, but at the same time, you're telling us to observe these measures. Which one? Pick a number, man."
This is going to be an interesting couple of weeks to come.
The question that comes to my mind, even as I think about what you're saying, is what then does the government think the citizenry will do? Or what will they think when the consistency in their lives is not just unkept promises, but unfulfilled functions that the government is actually supposed to fulfill?
Yeah.
Consistently unfulfilled. Because at some point, it'll dawn on them that actually they're on their own. Literally.
Yep.
Yeah. So leave us to our whims.
So,
since you've left us on our own, let's
so when
figure it
someone
out.
gets to that point, they will ask them, what do I need you for exactly?
And it's true, you can ask ourselves that question. We've had 10 months at least, 10 months of warning, 10 months to organize ourselves, make sure that if people fall sick, they have a place to go, and they shall find a hospital, and they shall find healthcare workers, they shall find bed space. If healthcare workers fall sick, this is what shall happen. We'll be able to have enough reserves so that they can move in and be able to help. We have heard that. We are still dealing, like I said, we are only talking about 1,000 people, odd 1,000, in hospitals around the country. And we're already talking of being overwhelmed. Just 1,000 people.
So that should actually then point
around the country.
It should point to the system in terms of health.
10 months of preparation, 11 almost of preparation. And 1,800 people or so can actually now make you panic and feel, my God, We are even transferring healthcare workers from villages to go to.
It's
Homa
bordering
Bay.
on the pathetic, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean,
You know, it's not even bizarre. It is because the consequence is actually catastrophic. You're looking at this situation when you read the comments that come from the leaders, county leaders. They're narrating what we already know. Oh, you see, we don't have beds. We already know that.
we knew you were lying to the president when you said that you were ready. We
Yes.
knew.
The question is, why don't you have beds?
Yes.
This is not at you. Those ones are we were caught unawares.
No.
Absolutely not.
No. Look at our response when COVID first hit our shows. It was excellent response. And we
In
actually...
words.
Yes.
And some deed.
The deeds actually helped us, should we say, bring some rationality to this. And the action that was supposed to follow, unfortunately did not follow.
Yep. We said this when that first time when the president said, I'm going to reopen, but make sure that it's you people. That was the government now washing its hands and saying, look, if you
Folks.
guys fall sick, just die. We are doing nothing else. You go, you get COVID, ukijiletea COVID, and you die, and your family dies. We told you. We warned you. It's like we no longer have any more responsibility over you, over this. 6:30. Let's see what's happening on the roads, and the conversation continues.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. "24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, we can already see the drama, guys, because the rains are coming down, so the roads are slippery. So Mombasa Road, let's start there. It's building up from the Gateway Mall to town, and the road is very, very slippery. We know that because of the construction, they had moved out. So we're about 1.5 lanes now on that road from Cabanas towards the JK, before Cabanas at the JKI turn off, and then moving forward. So before we even go anywhere, please, let's just be very careful, guys, because we don't want to see accidents. That was my imploration this morning. On Thika Road, trying to get into the CBD also. It's moving well from Survey up to Muthaiga. It slows down towards the Pangani Tunnel, but then it's not too bad at the moment. It's just starting to build up in different areas. So if you're there, that's what you'll see. Coming off of Kiambu Road, again, raining heavily here in this part of the city. And so... it's already bumper to bumper, guys, in many cases, and it's probably going to increase to more than 2-3 lanes at some point. So this is what's ahead. It's going to build up, that's for sure. We'll take a look around 7 and see how it may have gotten better. But if you're out now, you should be able to get through without too much of an issue right now. But we know it will build up. This is the warning ahead of time. We'll take a look at other parts of the streets in the next few minutes or so. Spice FMKE, talk to us on Twitter or text us on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
You have many. Pick one.
Well, let me just speak on a simple one. Uhuru signs IEBC chief selection law.
Okay.
The
He
president-
did that, didn't he?
He did. And what this law actually does,
Yep.
it sets the criteria for the selection of IBC commissioners and outlines the qualifications of members of the selection panel. Yes.
I raised the issue against this bill when it was still a bill in the National Assembly, and it has still gone on. So, and my main bone of contention here is that selection panel. The selection panel will be of 7 members, 4 of them from Parliament, 1 law society, 2 religious organizations. The player is picking the referee. I will never be comfortable with that until I'm otherwise convinced.
Unfortunately, such a selection, no matter how well-meaning the intentions are, it lends itself to this particular thought process that they are setting the stage for the elections. This is Kenyans speak. Whenever you see such a thing and you ask, wait a moment, how many people from Parliament? And how many? Already, the so-called independent are already outnumbered,
Yep.
even before you begin.
Even before you begin.
Yes.
The independence of the commission then is put to question.
It has to be put into question.
4 members nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, 1 member nominated by the Law Society, 2 members represented by religious organizations. Sasa, 4 out of 7.
Why don't they have someone from civil society?
Yep. They can say LSK is civil society.
No, LSK is not
That's
civil
the
society.
argument.
That argument is a bit
Why
weak.
don't they have somebody from the youth? Look, anybody can come here and ask the reason why they don't have representation.
Yeah.
Anybody can pop up and say this sector
Why
was
don't
not
you have
adequately
someone from
represented.
yes, from the ranks of those who are disabled?
It's true.
We have laws that require you to have certain quotas when you have such bodies.
You have
That
laws
is
that
fully
require equal
representatives.
representation.
Yes.
And equitable representation.
Yes.
So
And the big issue here is that the political class, those are the ones that are going to choose the political leadership. Those are the ones that are really going to influence, because even when it goes to nomination, they have to be vetted
Yes, they have
by
to be.
Parliament.
the same people that
So
you're going to come
you have
and
participated in selecting this person, then this person comes before the National Assembly for vetting. What are you doing? You're basically saying that Parliament shall choose the Electoral Commission.
Okay,
that's what's
exactly-
happening.
No, that's what has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parliament is going to pick the Electoral Commission.
So the impartiality that you would
This is-
expect, the independent part of the Electoral Commission just be removed.
Yeah, just forget about calling it independent. Just call it
Electoral
the
Commission
Electoral
of
Commission
Kenya.
of Kenya.
Of
Full
Kenya.
stop.
Yeah.
Or call it the Parliamentary Electoral
Electoral Commission.
of Kenya.
Parliamentary Electoral Commission.
Yeah.
It will be more appropriate.
Surely.
So, do you remember? There was once
The
a doctor. There's a song for everything. There was once a Dr. Mugo, not Muga, Mugo, quack doctor, and now he's going to go to serve 11 years in prison. City, sorry. For 5 years,
His name is James Mogo,
James
Disho.
Wairimo.
alias Mogo,
Mugo.
Wairimo,
Hey.
alias Dr. Jimmy.
Okay, hold on. James Mugo Ndisho, alias Mugo Wairimo, or Dr. Jimmy, those are many AKAs, represented everything wrong with the health sector. Despite being exposed by an investigative journalist for running an unlicensed clinic where he allegedly raped sedated women. I mean, what an animal. Anyway, Mugo still opened another facility where he continued with his practice until 2018 when he was smoked out. And so, when senior resident magistrate Martha Nanzushi sentenced him to 11 years and 5 months in prison yesterday on alternative of a fine of 1.42 million, there was a sigh of relief that justice had partly been served. This is because Mugo is facing a rape charge at the Milimani Law Courts as well. The verdict came after Mugo's admittance of guilt in operating an unlicensed medical facility. Once very active on social media, Mugo was first arrested in 2015 for operating an illegal clinic in Githurai. He was also accused of raping a woman he allegedly sedated at Prestige Healthcare Clinic. He went underground for 3 years and even served time at the Industrial Area Remand Prison over fraud allegations. My goodness, this guy had quite the beat. In 2017, he tried his luck in politics, but his attempts to clinch the Roysambu parliamentary seat ended in the Jubilee primaries. He disappeared again, only to resurface in 2018 with another medical facility in Kayole, which was the Milan Health International Clinic as a gynecologist.
Imagine. And
I'm
he was
telling
surviving
you,
all these things.
Guy
And
said,
he goes to court and he's
keep
like,
trying.
guilty.
Yeah, it's okay. That one he'll serve. Then this another case of rape. So even we'll see what happens. But yeah,
This one, he went in and said, charge is operating an unlicensed clinic. He said, guilty. Gone in. Imagine. Justice partly served, and I agree. Still in the courts, does Waitito have COVID or not?
can we get over this thing? Should have been
So
able to get the
Waitito
results.
says he can't go to court because he has COVID, according to his lawyer. The DPP is like, hey, but we surely
We can
we
test this
need
thing.
to test and verify that this man actually does have COVID. So yesterday the magistrate said, Sawa Waitito, please present yourself to the KNH and you will be tested for COVID. A doctor of Waitito's choice will also be present. He has to be examined by 3 doctors appointed by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council.
Is it not COVID they're looking for?
3 doctors to verify
The test
that
results.
this man
This
has-
is that. This is that.
and
That,
also bring in your own doctor.
that variety of COVID that
This is
only
COVID 2.0.
yeah, it actually just
Requires-
favors former governors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why it requires that array of
4
professionals.
doctors. 4
It's
doctors.
not just your average garden variety
Of
COVID.
COVID.
No. This is a serious type of
This is
COVID.
the serious COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when they find that he's not COVID positive or that he is, then things shall continue.
Then issues of contempt appear. If you're COVID negative and you came here to court and said and lied,
Well,
that
rather, you didn't come to
you
court.
didn't
on
come
the,
to court.
on the
You
pretense
sent
that,
your lawyer to say that
Yeah.
you're COVID nini. Utaki pata pata.
ouch.
There's a case, an issue in Parliament, and this is with regards to the vetting for the nominee for position of Data Commissioner. The nominee is Immaculate Kasait. Immaculate Kasait used to work for the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. She was in charge of voter registration and electoral operations. When she appeared before Parliament yesterday, MP after MP were asking, so what happened in 2017? So how was the data in 2017 handled? Why did you have to have the servers in France? Why can't we have the servers here? So do we know now where the servers were? And she was like, okay, guys, at IEBC, I was not in charge of data. I'm here for nominee for the position of data commissioner. But at IEBC, I wasn't in charge of data. I was in charge of voter registration.
So all those questions that you're asking me essentially should be directed elsewhere.
Yeah, I really cannot answer.
Cannot
those
answer
questions.
those questions.
Ask me about voters. Why did
Relevant to what
voters
I was
not
doing.
register? Why such kind of issues? Ask me why did so and so? Why did I go to look for my name on the register and I didn't find it? Such I could answer. But now about the data, no.
Sorry.
However, even outside Parliament, there's more opposition to her appointment, and this is the International Commission of Jurists Kenya has written a memorandum saying they are opposed to Ms. Immaculate Kasait's nomination and appointment as Data Commissioner. They say ICJ has sufficient reasons to believe that Immaculate Kasait is not fit to hold public office for failure to meet the standards stipulated under Chapter 6 of the Constitution, owing to the candidate's track record and performance as an employee of IEBC.
And do they state what these failings are in detail so that we can understand?
They say they have sufficient reasons. I think that this now is contained in the memorandum that they've submitted before Parliament.
Look, I think that anybody who served at that IEBC at that time is just going to wear that scarlet letter for a very long time.
you
It
imagine?
doesn't matter what you did or didn't do, whether you're involved
So
or not
long as you're
involved.
former
You were
employer-
making tea at IEBC.
See,
Finish.
Where are the servers?
Yeah. And why
Why
wouldn't
didn't
you
you open the servers?
You swept the floor. You swept the floor. Between period June, December.
Yes.
In that period. Scarlet letter. Boom.
but also of interest, if you think about it, it is appropriate.
That
Guilty by association.
Yes, it is appropriate. It is appropriate in that if you hang out with undesirable elements,
You're
in a-
stained.
Precisely. If you actually thought that you were upright and that you did not wish to be stained by this, because these allegations were in the public domain, everybody knew about it. You could have resigned. You could have taken a different position, but you didn't.
You're stuck there.
So what is read from that is that you approved.
But not necessarily.
No, what is seen.
Yeah.
It's not that that's what
Perception
you did.
Yeah.
It's perception here.
And that's what I'm saying. You're saying it's appropriate, and I'm thinking it's unfair.
Of course, it's not fair. It's not fair.
It's unfair. It's unfair.
It's not fair, but it
We
doesn't
work-
mean that it's not
we
true
work
or
here.
real.
It's very appropriate.
We work
but
here.
carry on. Tell me why you think.
We work in the Situation Room on Spice FM. If there was an allegation about something happening in this organization, in the print department, are we guilty by association?
For most people,
Should we now quit this position because of what has happened in the print
if
department?
it is something that happens in the print department of Standard Media, as far as they are concerned, you work for Standard Group.
Yeah,
That's it.
but it's an unfair.
But you see,
Isn't it?
it's a nice example to give. But what we do here does not influence the lives of people like what happens at the IEBC. It doesn't. The IEBC is a national body that is trusted to do certain things when it comes to the elections. Unfortunately, these are emotive things in this country.
Sure, and they bear with them a
Yes.
moral value.
So what I'm
Yes.
saying is,
Yeah.
if you understand everything that surrounds that particular work, it might be in your interest to create some distance between you and them if things begin to blow up. If you don't, then you'd better have a very strong case to support why you stayed and also to demonstrate your innocence.
Yeah, but if allegations are brought out against the IEBC in the manner in which election results were transmitted, but not in the manner in which voters were registered, in the manner in which the voter register was kept and managed, then you already can say, look, my job was this and I did my job. There is absolutely no question that has been raised about my job during the presidential petition or any other petition. The integrity of the voter register has not been questioned. That's the job I did. Now, if the other arms or other cogs were moving and there was a question that was raised about how that was done, that's a question that was raised about how that was done.
Eric, what you're saying is absolutely true. The unfortunate thing is this. It wasn't a department in the IEBC that was stained. It was the whole IEBC. So long as you work for the IEBC, you are going to be stained.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There is no escaping it. It
This one
doesn't
is
really
true.
matter.
You will.
Even if you got employed after the election results had been transmitted, but there's IBC attached to your employment record, you have a problem.
Yeah, and the perception also is that whatever, even if it's alleged rot that was taking place, that you didn't speak out against it, that then you knew what was going on, and that you were part of it. Yes, now
Even
because
if
when
you couldn't speak about
even if you
it-
couldn't speak about it, so when anybody mentions IEBC, say, you people who are bungling elections. That's
Look,
it.
There's corruption in government, so every public servant quits.
Yes. That's the thinking. Just think for a moment. There are very many members of parliament who actually do what they went there to do. Many. But when we talk about MPs, we don't single them out.
No, it's all of them.
We just say, these MPs. When we talk about civil servants who don't do what they're supposed to do, we don't.
We don't say in the ministry
no,
of...
No. Unless there's something that they've done which is outstanding
Like the Ministry of Health, for example.
and outstandingly good, or if it's outstandingly bad, we'll pinpoint. But normally, we just lump them in the same basket.
True. But now when you're talking to one individual because you're interviewing them for a particular position, you cannot say, but you work in this government.
Actually, you can. And that is where that person has an opportunity to present their case. That is now. This, you're on your own here. Present your case and prove beyond any doubt
There's
that indeed you were not part of whatever else that particular institution has been tarred with.
Okay, but ask me about the job that I was doing.
You see,
You work in government. Okay, so why do the police continue killing people?
police. I actually
You know me, I
work.
work in the Ministry
I
of
work in
Environment.
Yes, exactly. So, right. The police who work in the Ministry of Environment.
Okay. Tuendelee basi.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so pay school fees for smooth learning, parents told. Parents with children in boarding schools have been urged to pay school fees. Urged. Basic Education PS Belio Kipsang said the government was looking into ways of supporting publishers in the wake of the coronavirus, terming them key stakeholders in the sector. Kipsang, who spoke at a Nairobi hotel yesterday during the launch of the Kenya Literature Bureau strategic plan, urged parents to resume payment of school fees for smooth running of schools. Don't know if there's a magic pot where they're supposed to get this money, but okay. The kind of fees we were collecting is from boarding schools. We are collecting, rather. For you to be in the boarding school, you need to eat, use water and electricity, among others. We are only transferring the money parents were spending while children were at home to schools. So that now that's the money that they're transferring to schools, right? Also present at the function were some other fellows who said that... and then Kipsang further said, we are dealing with a disease that has its own dynamics. In other countries, resurgence of the virus has been witnessed. We are still studying the virus. We shall only consider allowing more children in schools after we are sure of their safety. And the Ministry of Health will guide us on that. And this is why I take issue sometimes with reporting. I'm looking at what he said here. It's very clear that he said, right now, we're not going to make that decision until we hear and get adequate information. On the very next page, another report where he has said, yes, schools will not close for those who have opened. And we're even considering opening schools for those other students because we realize that that is where they are safest. The next page says something totally different.
Is it
from
totally different? No,
Yeah.
it's not.
But he says here we're even considering opening schools, and that was it. Here he says we are not going to open schools for the other students until we are sure from the Ministry of Health what the information will be.
It's the same thing.
You know, it's a confusing time for the Ministry of Education. Because the Ministry of Education is part of the big government plan, all right? The government, as in the president and the CSs, get information from whoever it is they seek advice from. They're told, this is what we think, this is the scenario that we have, okay? The plans that were in place before this sudden surge was one thing. And that is why we opened up space. Businesses were opened. We said, let's have this cadre of students going back to school. Then suddenly, the numbers of COVID-positive individuals in this country start shooting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you have to revise. Now, the dithering, as I see it, has to do with seeking further advice and saying, folks, now that we're in this situation, what is the best way forward? Do we just close immediately? Do we don't? It's not that they don't know what to do, but they want to be clear, because if you take this step, then what next?
You know, I always find in some cases, right? Okay. In cases where you find that somebody is stuck, and I think you've said this before, just say the truth. Say that honestly, we do not know. As opposed to giving people an option or an opportunity then to start to think their own things. Right now, we don't know. Things are going to remain as they are for the moment. If it changes, we'll let you know. But unfortunately, people pick up on the little crumbs that you may drop and then now form their own ideas from that. It's absolutely necessary. We don't know. We're waiting to see how things unfold, and then we will alert you thereafter. And then it should be able to stop. And unfortunately, that has always been the story.
You see what
When Magoha said we don't know, people said you should know.
But of course, that's what we're going to say.
Now you're saying tell us
No,
you don't know.
you don't go around saying we do not know. You give information and you say we are still looking to determine this. That equals I don't know. Okay? But you say I don't know. So what you raise is, okay, if you don't know and it is you who heads this business,
Who should know?
Who's supposed to know? Yes. You must present yourself as having some knowledge, but you're seeking to embolden that particular knowledge with more facts.
Yeah.
So you're looking into it. But you don't just make a bold statement, I don't know. You don't know. Then it means we're sunk, we're finished.
Clearly. Now, COVID-19 has brought up many issues, right? Affecting livelihoods of many people. And we even discussed this. People lost their jobs, people lost their incomes, many people were not able to pay their rent. And very many people who are not able to pay their rent have faced eviction notices. Many have been evicted. Others have even been auctioned. A couple of weeks back, there was a story about a person who is a senior in government who is having an issue with their landlord over an eviction notice. Today, we are seeing other people who are also getting evicted because of these tough COVID-19 times. These people are Kisumu Senator Fred Outa, former GEM MP Jakoyo Mediwo, Nyakach parliamentary aspirant Eric Okeo, and also Pamela Olango's wife, and who's also Pamela Olango, wife of former Kisumu County Secretary Dr. Olango Onudi. They've been given 7 days to settle the arrears or face eviction. This is a move by Governor Anyang' Nyong'o, who's through acting city manager Abala Wanga. Through a letter sent to them, to Mr. Outa, dated 13th October, signed by Mr. Wanga, the senator has not made paid rent since he occupied the Milimani residence, and he has arrears of 1.7 million shillings.
How old or how young are these arrears?
These arrears,
A year plus. Some even beyond that year, isn't it?
Yep.
So it's not COVID related, is it?
Well, COVID has exacerbated a lot of things, man.
Or this was a precursor. Or this was a precursor to COVID.
Yeah, COVID has made things much worse.
Even before COVID hit our shows,
As of June
it was
12th,
already affecting people, was it?
as of June 2nd, Okeo, who is now the parliamentary aspirant, owed the county 2.47 million shillings, which is increasing at the rate of 60,000 shillings per month. So the rent is about 60 Gs. He owes 2.47 million.
Jeez.
But also there are details.
So it's not before.
Mr. Midiwo owes 876,000 shillings and is also facing eviction if he doesn't clear the arrears for his rented Milimani estate house.
So this one was before COVID.
No, but he gives reasons. If you read that article referring to one Mr. Jacob Midiwo, he gives reasons and says, and even provides evidence of letters that he has written communication that they have had with the county or the council regarding where he lives and the things that should be done and how they should go about this. Yes.
So what does he say?
Well,
He wrote to the city council where he raised issues over the deplorable state of the house, adding that when he got the house, it was bushy and that he even repaired the roofs and fenced it. The other person, Mrs. Onudi, may be forced out if she doesn't pay 3.62 million shillings in arrears. Over the past decade, there have been concerns raised over the grabbing of city-county government houses by prominent politicians, especially in the affluent Milimani estate.
Yeah.
Good rider there. So you came in, yes, it was in a deplorable state. Yes, you made some repairs, yes. So now the issue is that you saying that I should be reimbursed for the work that I did.
What seems to be suggested here is that there is a cost I incurred which you should have incurred, but then we don't really know the veracity of this because what was the understanding that you had? Because
As you were occupying the
yes,
house, as you're taking tenancy,
what was your
what
understanding?
was the understanding? Did we agree that you shall take up the tenancy and you do this?
Yes, or you maintain this and do that. I mean, what was the understanding? In the absence of that, then it is also very difficult to judge. The only thing that we know is that those arrears exist because there is no evidence to the contrary that shows that an attempt has been made to pay them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Eviction notices issued.
But then the question that comes to my mind again is, are they the only ones? Because if it turns out, because these are prominent people who are being pointed out.
Yeah.
The story may have highlighted these ones because now these are the names that you'd recognize. But then
It
notices
is very likely that,
could have gone to many more.
yes, which means
But
that
also the big allegation is that people with political influence are the ones who have occupied these houses.
you also ask, how on earth do you let rent accumulate for that length of time?
4 million shillings,
Kwani, how much rent does this person pay?
60,000.
60,000. So how long is the question? How long has it been? This COVID excuse, sorry, Eric.
COVID.
How long has it been? 60,000.
COVID.
How much are you paying? How many years?
Yeah, Eric
in
has
a
tried,
year,
huh?
that's 360,000 in a
Yeah.
year. And this one is saying is how much? Come and go, Joe.
You know you need 10 years for it to
Yeah,
get
that's what I'm saying. Can't tell COVID what. COVID had not even been invented by the time we were in arrears.
I think Eric is trying to convince us that there was a precursor to COVID.
Don't mind him.
Until before COVID, there were COVID influences. It is only now with COVID we realize it was actually COVID that was doing this thing all along. We just weren't aware that it was COVID.
In these COVID times,
Yes.
you forgive people.
It's not just forgiving. I think also there's need for clarity as to
And being realistic.
actually in the absence of clarity as to how it is the terms and conditions for the occupancy. Again, even commenting on this thing comprehensively becomes a bit difficult
Yep.
because we don't know.
Issue is that the matter is in court
Yes.
and they are dealing with it at that point. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, live streaming on spicefm.co.ke. We're also live across the country, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, and Malindi. In the next hour, let's talk about the real estate sector in the country and how it's doing. especially in this time of COVID-19. Are people suffering as much as they claim? Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Okay, what are we looking at this morning? Still a clog up right around Mombasa Road, and that's building up all the way from Cabanas headed to Mlolongo. Now, this is interesting. In both directions today, in and outbound on Mombasa Road, it is quite the bumper-to-bumper situation. And this has started about half an hour ago or a little bit longer than that. So those who had an opportunity to move freely on Mombasa Road, that unfortunately has come to an end. So we're looking at this all the way through to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Thereafter, we see some traffic then on Huru Highway through to Westlands and taking that part through the CBD. Langata Road and Gong Road looking good, but remember it's slippery everywhere you go. The rain still keeps coming down in sheets. On Thika Road, coming into the CBD, we have that problem right around the Pangani underpass and also joining Viga Corner from Kiambu Road. That is where we see a problem, guys. So it's going to be a traffic-packed morning. This one we have to prepare for because of the rain and other things as well. Let us know if you might be stuck anywhere. We'll see if we can help people move it around. Okay? Spice FM KE, that's how to get us on Twitter, or text us on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This conversation. Welcome to our audience on KTN Home. Joining us this morning, and you'll be with us for the next 2 hours until 9 o'clock. We are glad that you're with us. We are also live on Spice FM, Nairobi 94.4, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nyeri 96.0, Eldoret 96.7. Did I say Nyeri 96.0? It's Nakuru, that's 96.0, 90.9 in Nyeri. Malindi is 97.7, and spicefm.co.ke is our website. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We are live streaming on all those platforms. As we begin the hour, C.T. Muga, what is today's proverb?
Today's proverb: when brothers fight each other to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
When brothers fight each other to the death,
A stranger
inherits the father's estate.
Yes.
So a clever stranger incites brothers to fight.
Oh, the stranger doesn't necessarily have to be someone they don't
you wanna
know.
if you want somebody's estate,
Stranger here means this is not a relative.
incite them against one another.
So that you can hyena.
For all you know.
Sorry, you know I always look at the proverb from
Yes,
the other angle.
No,
Why are you sorry?
But
sorry.
you are. In fact, he's not even sorry.
Don't mind him. He's just saying it
The
because
truth is, for all you know, the stranger may have instigated the fight.
Yes. Make sure that you get there. Nyinyi piganeni, you know
Endeleeni tu.
this guy, bana, your brother. You know what your brother is saying about you? Goes to the other one. See, they fight. He inherits. And if you actually will find that each of the brothers had even put him in their will.
As their best friend,
Yes.
As their best friend.
best advisor.
Yeah. So we're talking about COVID-19 and the ravages of COVID-19 just before we went to the break, looking at people who were being evicted from their homes. Well, those was not necessarily because of COVID-19. But let's talk about COVID-19 and what it has done to our economy. And then what was happening even before COVID-19 struck. Specifically, let's speak about the real estate sector. This is in the land sector and also in the properties that are then developed on pieces of land. the land sector in this country has enjoyed some serious boom over the last, let's say, 17 years or so, where land prices have been on the up and up. Many companies have come up, buying and selling pieces of land. Some people are even arguing that now Kenya has basically become an eighth. So it's been very into it. You will find an eighth of land being sold somewhere in Lamu. You go to Turkana, you'll find a piece of land. Yeah.
An eighth.
50 by 100, others even 30
A
by 100.
tenth.
Even a
A
tenth.
16th.
You will
Jeez
find
Louise.
Yes.
being sold somewhere. And then we got to a point where people started saying, you see now, these ones put up houses and no one is buying. Or these ones put up houses and the purchase is now slow. Certain words started coming in to the conversation in the country, that there's a real estate bubble bust in the country. There's a property bubble bust in the country. And there are those that are saying, if you look at what is happening now, go around Nairobi and look at the number of properties that are there and they're empty, not occupied. They still have, so many months after they were constructed, you're not finding tenants moving into them. This is a clear indication that there is a real estate property bubble bust.
For there to be a bust, there should be a boom, shouldn't there be?
Yep.
Okay. So I would actually begin by questioning the boom. Did the boom exist?
Was there an actual boom?
Was there an actual boom? Because if we can determine that there was a boom, then the story of the
How would
bust-
you
What
determine
would characterize a boom? People are buying property, buying land, building. Suddenly people have the financial muscle to be able to do this, get into the business, whether it would be for commercial purposes
It's just-
or to put up a personal home.
It's
How would you characterize a boom?
an unusual increase in activity in that particular sector. And you've
There's
described it
rising
well.
demand, rising supply.
Yes.
And they are matching.
And they're matching.
You get to a bust where that supply then is so much and there's
no demand.
Sharp drop in demand. Sharp drop in demand then causes a sharp drop in prices. Sharp drop in prices and therefore means that you have a piece of land that or a house, and that house you maybe bought it for 4 million shillings and you cannot even sell it for $1 million if you wanted to sell it.
And it also means usually that you have a little discussion you have to have with your financiers.
Yep.
And it's usually not a pleasant discussion that you're having with them.
Yep.
Yes.
So is there a bust in the country? If people are unable to pay for what to pay for their property, but the property prices have not necessarily dropped. I'm looking at, have we seen a 50% drop in property prices across the country, across the board? And I don't see any report that suggests that.
And I'm asking, this boom that we speak of, what characterized it? What is it that actually indicated or informed us that we had a boom?
What do you think? Boom or bust?
Well, I think there was a boom, that's for sure. We had a time, if you look over the last 10 years, there was this mad rush, and the thing that was on the minds of people was to buy a piece of land, buy a home, buy an apartment here. It was clear that was. People were rushing to financial institutions to get this done. People went in and you paid a deposit, and then what you paid in rent now went towards it being your own. Right? So
Yep.
the rent essentially was paying now towards this house becoming yours. And we had a number of people who were doing this around the country. Taking into consideration that the mortgage footprint in this country is actually quite low, and a lot of financial institutions are trying to put that up there. But there was a time where everybody was rushing to buy land. There was a time where everybody was dashing into the real estate business. They had an extra amount of money here, it went into real estate. And then even the organizations that had an opportunity, what were they doing? They were going into real estate. Some of the big names that we hear today in the real estate sector did not exist 15 years ago. Didn't. So it was clear that it was a sector in which there was some kind of profitability, or there was a lot of interest by the general public who would essentially come in and push and drive it. So for me, yes, there was a time where it was really, really up there. Right now, the activity is not as great. Yesterday alone, in terms of auction that came from one of the financial institutions in the country, in one housing establishment, 16 houses up for auction because people are not able to pay anymore. That's just one. One. The list, and this is coming from the national housing. This is across board. It's what's happening around the country. Now, many could say that the bust has come as a result of COVID, But also before that, we had the conversations in this room where real estate were clamoring for people to even come and pay 1 month and get another 2 free. So the interest or the financial muscle or the ability then showed that it was not as strong as it was 5 years ago.
So in your opinion, there's a bust?
Yes.
But what?
I say there is no bust. I say what is happening is that there's a slight correction of pricing in the market. The market has gotten to a point where it's on a plateau. There's price correction, but it's not a bust. A bust would mean that you have a piece of land and you bought this piece of land, let's say a quarter acre for 750,000 shillings, and now you cannot even sell it for 100,000 shillings. And do not think I've heard anyone who is saying that that's the kind of paper that they are holding.
But do we think we're heading in that direction?
I don't think so. I think it's just a correction, and then the prices will stabilize at some point.
I actually think we're heading in that direction.
I think we're heading to the point where people
will
will
have
not
a piece
even
of
be
land
able
and
to
they can't
sell
even
it
sell that
at
piece
all.
of land.
And not even be able
So
to
there'll be
sell
no demand. There'll be no people who want to buy land.
No, because I also think that even the very banks who are trying to sell these things will find that they can't sell them because there's nobody to buy them. We've already seen indications in this particular sector that indeed there have been attempts to recover perhaps what you lent. And it's not that you haven't tried, but there are no takers. Because what COVID has done, it has reduced the numbers, in my opinion, of people who are able to afford this kind of business. Because for you to be lent money, it means you're able to repay whatever it is you've been lent.
Yep.
Now, if your source of income dries up or it shrivels, it doesn't dry, but it shrivels,
Yep.
then of course your capacity will be reduced. This is one of the things that COVID seems to have done very, very, very effectively. So, but again, we'll be discussing this later.
Let's bring in somebody so we can continue the conversation. And this is George Washiri. George is the CEO of Optiven Group. It's a real estate company. They sell pieces of land around the country. They also are involved in development. George, good morning. It's good to have you.
Morning. Good to have you also.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, we are having this conversation from just our observation, layman's perspective. And so that's why we'd like to have you join us and shed light on the particular matter we're talking about. In your opinion, from your experience as the CEO of Optiven Group, is there a property bubble bust? Has there been a boom at all?
Wow.
Yes, George, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is George Washiri. I lead a company called Optiven. We have been in operation for the last 20 years, and our business is to economically and socially empower and transform people. We ensure that Kenyan people have got affordable homes, and we do it in a very strategic way whereby we allow Kenyans to own it, either through installments or those who are able to buy cash. And I'm happy that for the last 20 years, we have enabled over 7,000 people to have their own homes. And that's why we are here at Optiven, and we thank God that for 20 years, we have been there. So I was listening to the discussions talking about the property bubble, and I was smiling, looking at Kenya today. Kenya is a very, very young country. I have been able to travel around the world, and I went to this particular city, the city of Istanbul. This city is about 18 kilometers in width and 173 kilometers in length. And the whole city is built up. So when I look at our Nairobi city, Nairobi is a dot. That's why I say that in Kenya, we are just joking. We are just scratching the earth on real estate. We have not even started because remember, Kenya is a young country. It's a young population. We have millions and millions of people below 35 years. So these guys require homes. These guys require land. When you talk about property bubble, I just smile because looking at the statistics, by the year 2050, more people are going to occupy this particular city of Nairobi, over 6.7 million. So we cannot really talk about the bubble. We need to rethink differently on how we can build up our real estate to be affordable. Remember, real estate is not only land. We are talking about buildings, commercial real estate. We are talking about warehousing. So for me, it's very interesting when people talk about the bubble, yet we are just starting real estate. Look at the Chinese are coming to Kenya.
So we don't even have
so you say there's no bubble at all, George?
There's no bubble at all.
Okay.
I've been there in 20 years, and the other reason why I believe there's no bubble is because look at the mortgages. According to Central Bank, we have less than 25,000 mortgages So Kenyans are not borrowing from the bank. Very few Kenyans who borrow from the bank because, for example, you may find that out of that 25, maybe yourself, you have 2 mortgages. So I don't believe there has been a bubble at all.
So how then do you explain the rise in the number of people who are defaulting on whatever monies they had borrowed to perhaps put up or to buy a property, and the number of units of housing or buildings that are being put up for auction? There has been a clear increase. How do you explain this?
Oh, very interesting. I call this a temporary bump. I call it a temporary bump because if you look at Kenya today, there are very, very many people who buy their own houses through their own savings, through SACCOs, and very few people who borrow money to build from the bank. A good example at Optiven, 75% of our people who are building in our estate in Kitengela, Victory Gardens, Amanridge, the place of peace, these guys have not borrowed a single coin from the bank. They are from their own savings, and even this time of COVID, we have seen more uptake of green spaces. Why? Not all sectors are affected. There are sectors who are making money, and I'm sure that you're aware of that. So we cannot talk of bank repossessing. Of course, this is the normal business for the banks, but we cannot go out there and tell the population, wow, there is a bubble in Kenya. We'll be misleading those entrepreneurs who want to venture into real estate, because real estate is big, not only in Kenya, but in East Africa.
But I think we have to be realistic, George, even as we look at this. The fact of the matter is that there are people who got into an agreement to either own a home or build a home and have either not been able to complete it or are not being able to keep up with their payments. That's the reality. I don't think we can run away from that. Even as we look on the other side, where there are people who have been able to have their savings, or those who are doing well in business, I think we must look at the other side because it contributes to the bigger picture at the end of the day.
I would say that if you look at the numbers, if you look at the number of people who are having challenges in terms of pay, comparing with the magnitude of real estate, let's say Nairobi, because Nairobi is a big economy, it's a $99 billion economy. So if you look at the city of Nairobi and you compare the number of people who are losing homes, so we cannot draw a conclusion and say, hey, wait a minute, everybody is losing. Look at the upper market, look at the average market, look at Buruburu. So if you compute that population, we cannot do a conclusion, say, wait a minute, there is a glut in Kenya. That will be misleading our young people who are aspiring to have a roof under their head.
But at the same time, you're also telling people that there is no problem, that, come in, enter into this, and you'll be absolutely fine. Is that what you're saying? That the home ownership arena in the country looks so good that even if it's a young person who is up and coming in terms of entrepreneurship or has a great job, that come in and the scenery looks fantastic. There'll be no problems whatsoever. It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Of course, I do a lot of mentorship for business people. I do mentorship for young people, through George Washoli YouTube. And I encourage the young people, if they're looking to do business, don't look elsewhere. Think about real estate, because real estate is real. Look at the country like America. They have been in existence for 300 years, yet sometimes they have a slow uptick, but slow uptick does not mean that the road is blocked. When you encounter a bump when you are driving, that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. Of course, there are little challenges here and there, but I encourage young people out there looking to invest in real estate. This is the best industry that you can. And I can tell you, what you are seeing today, the pandemic effect is temporary. I want to talk on this particular show another 3 years, because I am for sure. You see the way the government is doing the infrastructure. And you know that in Kenya, infrastructure opens up a business, especially for real estate. So there are opportunities. Look at the counties. The counties, every time they get call from governors, they are looking for a developer who can do affordable homes in Uasungishu, in Lamu. And this is what we need to be talking about. Can we access finances to do affordable homes?
Okay,
and
George,
that's what you see the Big Four agenda.
I can understand, and I'm very encouraged when we talk about an optimistic look at what it looks like in the country. Take that vis-a-vis the high numbers of auctions we are seeing, even in the classified sections of the dailies.
But what is high? High is how many?
Or compared to zero. What are we
Not,
talking
not
about?
compared to zero. Compared to, if you talk about the
How can we-
mortgages, you
how can
said
we-
there are about 23,000 mortgages in the country. Those 23,000, it's from the ones that are active. It doesn't mean that all those 23,000 are in a year. So if you say that there are a total of 23,000 mortgages, how many of those mortgages are under distress?
Well, I think that's a piece of information we will need to find out directly from the people who give mortgages.
Because when you
However,
see
no, what I'm
auctions in the
saying is,
paper and you see like
I'm just
there are
saying,
10 or 15,
and, no,
10 or
I'm just
15 out
saying
of
now.
23,000.
No. We can't say out of 23,000. I'm saying 10 or 15 in the classifieds, right? And those announcements that are given, because I'm sure, George, you know how it is. If you look at the numbers that come out in terms of houses that are being auctioned at this time compared to a previous time, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, if the outlook is so good from where you're looking at it, how do we explain that some are not able to pay?
Interesting.
Go
There,
ahead,
Go
George.
ahead.
Interesting. I'm smiling because you cannot draw conclusions. I'm not a scientist, but you can draw a conclusion because 2-3 pages of auctioneers advertising houses. When I was young, a young boy, when I was selling cars some time back, those auctions were still happening. And I like your co-partner who is asking, it's a 15 days on hold. So auctioneers are in business of recovering people who mismanage their estates. And that number is too small comparing with the massive development happening in our counties. I happen to come from county. And after devolution, I have seen a lot of real estate developing homes. So we cannot draw a conclusion because we have seen 2 pages of auctioneers. This has been going on, and that's a message I want the people to hear, that if you are thinking of investing in real estate buildings, residential real estate, buying land and developing like Octavian, doing value addition, doing solar, green energy, my friend, if you are listening to me, this is a space that you can invest. We have seen foreigners, Chinese coming to invest big. There's a company coming from Turkey. They are putting about, billions of shillings in real estate. What are they seeing that we cannot see? So as Kenyan people, we need to see past 3 years, past COVID, past 10 years, because look at the way we are giving birth. Every day, the population is increasing. They are saying by the year 2030, we are going to hit about 67 to 70 million. These fellows require homes. They require land. So let's not spread the word of doom out there, because remember, we have over 13 million young people who are looking to join the labor market, to join startup, to do business. We have to encourage them. And for me, as George Washiri, I am in that particular business, and I know the opportunities available. And of course, when time allows,
Mr.
I can tell
Washiri,
people
when
who
you
are
look at
aspiring, yes.
the client base that you have in your business, would you say, if you were to segregate them, are they mostly businessmen? Are they people who are in paid employment? How are they divided up?
We have about 47% they are career people, a huge percentage of people who are doing startup businesses, and about 10% diaspora. So they are mixed up. And especially for career people, they prefer saving their own money, joining the circle, and investing in piece of land, and then they build. And for us at Optiven, we don't only sell piece of land. We put all facilities. Water is there, roads are there, trees are planted, and they are able to set up their homes at their own pace. That's why when they talk about mortgages, they are so few. Below 25,000 mortgages are few. But I've seen people in our projects, even now, they are building. They are building their homes. Ask them, where you get the money? These guys belong to shamas, to circles, and they are able to generate this particular money to their own homes.
Let's take a break now. We're having a conversation with George Washiri. He's the CEO of Optiven Group. The conversation this morning is on the real estate sector during, prior to, and post COVID-19 era. So, is there a real estate property boom and bust? George Washiri is saying there's absolutely nothing of that sort. Ndu, of course, says there's a bust. CT Muga is questioning, has there even been a boom at all? And I am saying there's no bust. It's just a price correction in some way, but the real estate sector is still thriving. So let's continue this conversation after we come out of this break. 24 minutes after 7. We are live on Spice FM and KTN Home. Let's see what's happening in the skies and on the road, and then we'll be back.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. "24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM."
Light rain showers continue. Nairobi at 16. Highs of 22 and lows of 14. It looks like a rainy day all through well into Friday. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru at 16 degrees. Highs of 20 and lows of 13. And rain expected through most parts of the day. It looks like a wet day in Nyeri as well. We'll see highs of 19 and lows of 14. Mostly cloudy conditions at the moment. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 14. We'll see highs of 20 and lows of 13 with rain later. It looks like a wet day in Kisumu as well. Mostly cloudy at 20. Highs of 26. Kakamega is mostly cloudy. We'll have thunderstorms later with highs of 23 and lows of 16. In Mombasa, we'll see highs of 29 and lows of 25 and a rain expected later. As is in Malindi, we'll see highs of 29 and lows of 25. Step out of Kenya into Kampala, 19 degrees and mostly cloudy. Highs of 23 and lows of 18 with thunderstorms in the forecast. It's raining and a light drizzle in Dar es Salaam at the moment at 25. It'll go to highs of 31 with cloudy conditions later on. Johannesburg is mostly sunny, and those sunny conditions will continue to a high of 29 and lows of 15. And finally, for now in Lagos, clear skies at 25. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 24.
"102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu."
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
If you didn't leave Mombasa Road before this and you don't have to be somewhere in a hurry, don't. Because it's bumper to bumper all the way from the Way Bridge, and then you get past Gateway Mall to the SGR and then to the turnoff at the JKIA, through and through. And today, traffic is building up all the way to General Motors. You have a small reprieve and then you get into it again all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. The rain is not helping issues this morning either, guys. So you need to slow down anyway. The roads are slippery. Visibility is poor in some parts of the city coming out of Westlands, that's for sure. Langata Road, as you get to the Timor roundabout, then on towards Nyayo Stadium or towards Bagathi Way, not looking too bad, but it's slowed down again because of the weather. Gong Road to the City Mortuary roundabout looks good at this point, not too bad. Thika Road, however, mishmash. Kiambu Road is trying to join with Iga Corner, all from Allsops then to Pagani Underpass. It's very slow this morning. This is where we see most of the traffic. We'll look outside of the city in a short while and see how traffic is affected in other parts. Okay? Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 28 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. This and every morning in the room is Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and CT Muga. This hour, we are talking about the real estate sector in the country. Yes, Ndu, you've raised, pertinent questions, asking, looking at the paper, what you see is very many properties put on auction. It's not just houses, though. You'll even find motor vehicles put on auction. You hear people talking about their stuff that is being auctioned from their own homes and others. It could be an indicator of stress in the economy, but is it a bigger indicator of what is happening to a particular sector? If we just look at the penetration of mortgages, so less than 25,000 mortgages, not less than 25,000. It's less than 25,000 mortgages. There are some people who have more than one mortgage. They are counted among the 25,000. That would mean there are only 25,000 homes being sold in the country if it was just focusing on mortgages. But there are very, very, very many more homes that are being constructed, being bought. There are very many pieces of land which are being sold in various parts of the country, even in the counties, which tells you that there's another source of money that is coming into this sector. It could be like what George Washiri is saying. SACCOs are really involved. In fact, SACCOs, many big SACCOs are even involved. They have an arm that is involved in investing in the real estate or direct savings. People are involved in that. The question then would be, are we seeing a strain, for example, in George Washiori's Optiven and all the properties that you're selling around the country and the developments that are coming up with, and you have payment plans, are you seeing a strain in the repayment or payments for the people who have already committed to take up your properties? George.
Do take two, please, kindly.
Sorry, George. I think you didn't get that. So what we're asking is, from all the properties that you're selling around the country as Optiven and the ones that you've sold, have you gotten to a point where you see someone comes and they commit and they pay the down payment or the commitment fee to take up a piece of land? And I'm sure there are some properties that you have a payment plan. Do you see an increase in the number of defaulters of those payment plans?
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Of course, for us at Optiven, we offer our properties either cash or installments. And for the past couple of months, especially after March, when the first case was reported, we thought that we are going to be in trouble. And of course, we closed our offices and we now started working from home. And we told our customers, you can come to the site. But what we have discovered that the variation of default, because generally when people pick up property, some are excited, some lose jobs. So we usually have 3% people asking for refund or defaulting. The only small variance we have seen is that we have seen 4% default, but we have also seen an increase in demand for open spaces. So we cannot really tell that the numbers have gone up, because the variation we have between 3% to 4% is because we have also seen more customers, more people discovering that they require a piece of land to build their home, because they've discovered that now they're not in the offices, they need a place they can retreat. And that's why you find that the RAD sector has peaked even this time of in a pandemic. Thank you.
If I may ask a question, Mr. Washiori, when you talk about properties, there are what we call high-end properties, middle-income properties, low-cost housing. Which sector of the property market would you say has been the hardest hit? Or have they all been hit?
I think the sector that has been hit by this pandemic is the high end. High end. Why? Many developers, especially the international developers, they rushed to do high-end properties, 20 million, 30 million, 70 million. And there were a lot of interest, especially from external sources, people, the capital venturists. So they ventured on high end. And of course, that not everybody who can afford high end. In fact, they say only 1% of Kenyan population that can be able to afford high end. So that sector, especially commercial real estate, is affected, because remember, all of us, we are now working from home. So people with commercial real estate, they had to really persuade tenants either to extend their moratorium or maybe to reduce rent slightly. People who are renting spaces like a restaurant, for example, hospitality, we had a time to negotiate in terms of rent. So I think a pandemic has hit the upper end, but not the middle, not the lower. And that's why I find that if you go to Kitengela today, you want to hire a truck, you can't find a truck. They are all busy delivering Darugo stone. They are busy delivering sand. And there's a lot of activities across counties, especially in the middle. Thank you.
How would you then describe, if you look at what you're calling the high end, but let's just look at the commercial real estate sector in general, the office spaces and the malls? There are people who would say that look at the malls are emptying out, and look at the office spaces are emptying out. It doesn't matter whether they are in the what is so-called upmarket areas or the CBD or the lower market areas. There has been an impact for business. Therefore, the commercial real estate side has been hit. Is that not so?
Let me say that for the shopping centers, the malls, of course, the uptake has about 60 to 70%. And the reason is that there was a time that everybody did a mall. But that does not mean that looking at 5 years to come, that the same spaces are going to be empty. I happen to be a tenant at the hub, and also a tenant at the waterfront. And I remember when we started, there were very few people. But lately, I have seen companies looking for spaces. So they may be having 30% empty spaces, but I consider that as a temporary bump. Doesn't mean that 5 years to come, 3 years to come, these upcoming entrepreneurs, startups are not going to require space to provide food, to provide medicine, to open shops. So it is not all gloom and doom, especially for mall developers. But of course, at the moment, there are a few challenges, and every business have got a challenge. Not only business, even government. Sometimes we are fighting in Kenya, and then the fight ends. So what you're experiencing today because of pandemic, I would say is a temporary thing, and I can see better future even for the mall owner.
But that temporary thing, is it not gloom for the investor who's put up a mall?
And then there are no clients.
If you look at
client.
If you look at the percentage of uptake, if you are looking at 60-70% uptake, you are good. You are able to service your loans. You are able to do service charge. So I think it's not all doom, because 70% uptake, if you're in class and you get 70%, it's not that bad. But if you're talking about 20% uptake, now that one is a doom. So, but I am hoping that, and I'm happy to know some of these small owners. Of course, they are able to meet their fixed costs. It's only that their margins, they are slightly lower. That does not mean that it's all doom.
Mr. Washuri, you mentioned that some of the people who you've interacted with, who purchase properties, a good number do it by cash, some through SACCOs, some through banks. Now, we know that the government has borrowed extensively from our should we say the banking or the financial sector, up to something like 3.4 trillion shillings. Now, what this to a layman means that the banks will not have all that money to lend out to individuals. My thinking as a layman again. But then when you talk about cash, you bring in a new discussion. It means perhaps the sources of the cash is undocumented, it's unknown. You then bring in the discussion of money laundering, people who have acquired money through means that are not very easy to determine. Now, what am I saying? I am saying that when you look at this against the backdrop of, say, the government going into real estate development and bringing in land, which belongs to them, don't you think that all these things more or less distort the vision of the market, as we call it? Because you can't call it an even playing field. The variables are all jagged and they're all over the place.
Wow, thank you. I would say that of course, the government is projecting, out of the Big Four, they are projected to do 500,000 houses. And, of course, they have started in some areas. But 500,000 houses is a drop in the ocean, considering that there are many people going to the counties to settle there, working there. And, of course, from our experience, 20 years experience, the people who are buying land, either cash or installment, these are the people in the informal sector. Remember, according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, we have about 5.7 million informal businesses that are not registered. We have about 1.7 million registered companies. And these people, if you're doing your own startup, one of the vision of these business owners is to have a place of their own. And the other thing that we have seen the government do, which I think we are happy about, I belong to a private Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and we're pushing government to pay suppliers. And for the last couple of months, we have seen government refunding VATs. We have seen His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta saying, let us pay suppliers. And when the government spend, it means that there is money in the circulation. I'm sure you saw from the central bank that there's now more money in the circulation, and now people are able to access this money. The other thing is that contributed to this purchase, especially for open spaces and land, is Diaspora Inflow. We had over 250 billion last year. And this year, the inflow is also increasing because remember, these diasporians, they also realize that east or west, home is best. And for us at Optiven, we are offering that particular solution to the diasporians. And I see more uptake going forward, especially for residential real estate, because every Kenyan, in their own mind, they want to have a place they call home. So what the government is providing is also a drop in the ocean. What we ask the government to do, I know they have formed the Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company, but what the government should do is to focus on infrastructure. Because if roads are done from Kitengela, from Roiro, county government does the roads, it means that developers like Optiven, we go out there and provide these homes. Why? We understand our customers. We can be able to package a product for our customers. And of course, you have seen the government putting a lot of money on infrastructure, and that is recommendable. Thank you.
When you hear that, and that's what the question that you're asking, CT, is that really a bad thing when you have multiple sources of money that's coming into the real estate sector? Because you're saying that it may create that kind of instability when it's not coming directly from formal employment or from formal sector. It's also coming from the informal sector and all. Would that be a bad thing?
No, it's neither bad or good. I'm simply saying it distorts the picture.
What picture?
For instance, if the government is putting up a building, usually it's in land that they own.
Yep.
So the value of that land is not included in the cost of that house. It's like you've eliminated it. And you can call it low-cost housing. All right? So market forces at that point in time have already been distorted. It's actually not a level playing field because other developers have to contend with land, then they have to contend with the actual building of the property. And then they have to contend with the markup that they require. So when you have this coming into play, and why I brought in the issue of money, the central bank may say there is more money coming into the market. Those who seek to get facilities or borrow money from the bank may differ with the central bank completely. That's what the central bank thinks. Because I don't know of a scenario where the bank or the country is borrowing less or has made attempts to actually pay off whatever it is they owe to our financial institutions. Because it's in paying it off that the banks would be more liquid than they currently are. So all I'm saying is that when you look at the situation that we have and the variables that are at play within this particular market, there are many, and the picture they portray may not be what it is that we are being told. That's all I'm saying.
And I think it may just actually be stabilizing then the sector. Because if you had that one main source, if all the money was coming directly from the formal financial sector, then that would be a higher risk. If you think about some of it is coming from the formal financial sector, people going to borrow money from the bank to invest in real estate. Others are depending on diaspora remittances, so people who are in the diaspora abroad who are investing locally in the real estate. Others then are even going through their own informal businesses, savings from the returns on your business, and then you're investing in the market. That mix is good for the sector.
That mix is incomplete if we don't include the allegations that there's money coming from tenderpreneurship, as we call it.
Add that as well into
Just
the mix.
throw that into the mix.
Makes it all very good.
The good thing is for purposes of the economy, that money goes back into the economy.
Sure.
Yes, you see. Now, all I was saying was that when I look at these things, the picture that I get is not a harmonious one. This is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I have to look at it as it's segmented and say, okay, in this sector, this is what I see. In this segment is what I see. Because if you talk about the high end, and Mr. Washuri has explained it well, that many people who come in to invest in properties, come in from outside the country, want to invest in high-end property. Now, when you mention, let's not even mention 20 million. Let's talk about a house that costs 10 million shillings.
Yep.
How many people in this country can afford a house that costs 10 million? And how long do you need to save in order to pay for it? And how much do you need to earn in order to be able to save, to be able to buy that while conducting your normal affairs on a daily basis? Yes.
On average, George is still with us on the line. On average, what is the buying price for a medium-sized house? Let's say just a 2 or 3 bedroom house. Is it below the 10 million mark or is it above the 10 million mark?
The average purchases of houses, if you set up houses ranging from 3.5 all the way to 10 million, you have a wide span of buyers. When the house is above 10 million, you may find that the buyers become lesser and lesser. And that's why you find that many developers, they are looking for houses for 5.5 million, 4.5 million, 3.5 on the outside of Nairobi. Those ones, we usually get a lot of requests for people looking for houses below 10 million.
Sure. So are these individuals or families who have this money saved up, or are they entering into agreements where they're paying a certain amount monthly? If they're paying a certain amount monthly, what are they looking at paying?
We are looking at a mix of people. There are those people I talked about, 5.7 million, small business owners. We have people in Korea. We have diaspora who are also purchasing. And most of them, we have seen they are able to pay between 30,000 all the way to 100,000. Of course, there are a class of people who can say, George, I wanted to pay you 30% deposit, but I can be depositing 200,000 a month. So we have those clusters of people, but majority, they are comfortable between 60 and 70.
So if somebody's paying 50, I mean, because we can do the math, of course, but if somebody's paying 30 to 50,000 shillings a month, I'm interested to know across board, the people then who have the muscle to do this in the country at the moment, with all of these factors being taken into consideration. Do you see a higher number of people who are able to do this now than we did, say, 12 months ago, 24 months ago?
I would say that if there are sectors that they are smiling, there are sectors of, open spaces, or customers looking to buy land and develop. Because when you develop your own house, you have your own taste, and you find that many Kenyans prefer building their own homes. I said earlier that if you go to these towns of Thika, Kitengela, Gong, and you're looking to hire a truck, everybody's building, especially career people. Remember, Kenya is a country of side hustle. There are many people in career, and they are doing other things out there. So these are the people that are now very active. They are now at home. They are able to build. So that's the cluster of people that we have seen lately, very active during the pandemic. And maybe I would like you to pay a visit in some of these towns like Kitengela, Thika, Gong, and see the activities that are happening on the ground. In fact, you change your perspective, because Kenyan people fear banks. They don't want to borrow money from the banks. They believe in their own savings, their own business. They take money from their businesses. And that's how we are. Maybe you need some lessons on the benefits of borrowing, because, of course, there are people who say, George, me, I don't want a loan. Yep. Give me 24 months to pay.
Mr. Washuri, there is the factor indeed that many Kenyans, forgive me, Eric, have side hustles. But if I were to go by statistics, and this is what I managed to get, 2017 statistics by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they did an economic survey, and what they've termed was those who are in the lower income bracket had an average of 23,000 shilling salary. That's what they earned. In the middle income were 23,000 per month, of course, to 119,000. Now, if you look at these figures, let's even double them, all right? The tax person, if you are earning a certain amount, will take 30% of your pay. And then you have just the normal life that you need to live. How much do you need to save in order to even be able to afford a 2 million shilling house, if that is what? What I'm saying is this: side hustles notwithstanding, this may have been true before COVID, because everything, including side hustles, have reduced the earning capacity of very many Kenyans. So, because of that, the boom that your industry has enjoyed, how do you see it continuing with this reality of COVID?
Well, thank you. I think I like the Kenyan minds, because Kenyans are extremely innovative. I would say that there are industries that are really, really making money. Some of these industries is ICT industry. Right now we need, like this virtual meeting. We have seen industries like health, and we have seen other industries that are favored by this pandemic. And that's why we say that entrepreneurs, when you give them a lemon, they make a lemonade. And we have seen a lot of these entrepreneurs mutating and thinking differently and doing things very differently. So that does not mean that there are other sectors that are not affected. So I would say it's like 50-50. So pandemic comes with its own advantages and also disadvantages. So we should not generalize to say that the entire economy is in shambles because of the pandemic, because we have seen people mutating from one level to the next. And going forward, especially for open spaces, we might see more uptake because there's a panic. People know that you can be told to work from home. And that's why you find that people like Optivent, we have seen a higher uptake, especially for people who do their own homes. I think that's my take.
Okay. Eric, I know you had a question, but George, there have also been, unfortunately, very many cases where people have put their money into projects and it has not been forthcoming. On short of calling them fraudulent schemes or things like that. So you have a lot of people then who are hesitant then when it comes to putting any hard-earned money that they have been able to put aside into projects like this or any that they're not sure of when it comes to owning a home. How are we going to get away from this heavy image that is resting on the minds of people when they say, okay, I put this money together, how can I be sure that if I put it into any kind of real estate, that I'll be sure I'll get returns on it?
Okay, fantastic. I happen to do a lot of, leadership talks, and I have a following that I advise that every time you want to put money in real estate, don't put money because you have seen Optivent on media. check it out. Do your due diligence, because remember, we have about 10,000 companies dealing with the properties in Kenya. So out of these particular companies, I always tell the potential buyers that find out who are the directors. Is the company registered? Do they have an office? So that by the time you are going to enter into an agreement, you are sure that the agreement is watertight. Get a lawyer to do a good agreement. But we have seen that most of the Kenyan people, they trust quickly, including myself. You may find that you're even paying money without necessarily having an agreement. So if something happens, you have nothing to fall over. However, we are happy that currently we have seen the government coming in and preventing these fraudulent transactions by ensuring that if you are doing a search, you can do it online. And I'm happy that we are now able to do searches online through e-citizen. You only need to do a Q reader on a title, and you are able to read to see the history of your property. And I'm happy that out of the 53 registries, the government is to ensure that all these registries are automated. This way, we reduce the number of fraudsters that pick people's money. They are not able to produce titles, and I think that's a good step towards this development of real estate in Kenya.
Even the fraud goes beyond just the piece of land and the agreement that you've entered into. There are those that complain that you went ahead, did due diligence, and you found that this company is legit. Mm-hmm. You started your payments towards the purchase of a house. At some point, then the company itself goes under because of poor management. Others are complaining about being enticed to invest in buying a piece of land somewhere, and you're told that we're going to invest some greenhouses into farming, and then you will get some returns out of it. And then some months down the road, that also becomes a cropper. What would you advise people on how to avoid such?
I think my word is that, of course, we are entering into business. Business is a risk. Even what we are doing at Optiven is a risk. And they say in every return, there is a risk. So doesn't mean that because you lost a property 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you will never invest. It's like buying a car. You buy a new car and go and get an accident. Doesn't mean that once you're out of the hospital, you would buy a car. But my caution is that it's very, very important to do the due diligence. But that does not mean that at one point or another, you won't miss. Personally, I lost 5 million on another transaction. So, but of course, it's good to be cautious. But we must not really fear that you never do investment because maybe you lost 500,000, you lost 200, because that is part and parcel of life. Because we are living in a society whereby, the word the authenticity, it doesn't exist, and if it does, with very few people. But I'm happy that what the government is doing is going to prevent the cases of this kind of thing.
From your very optimistic view of what the market looks like now, maybe paint a picture of what you think is going to happen in the future. When it comes to owning homes for Kenyans or even owning pieces of commercial property across the country. And I think a lot of the focus is on the bigger cities and towns in Kenya. What would be your forecast if we're going to look 5 years down the line? Do you see more Kenyans owning homes and commercial properties?
Looking at 5 years to come, given that Kenya, especially the city of Nairobi, is the hub, it's a gateway to Africa. And looking at the devolution, especially the counties, I would like that the people who are thinking about real estate, I think the place to invest is in the county headquarters, and also those who are migrating to the city of Nairobi. I think there is a lot of hope, especially when we see development of infrastructure, the highway coming up and other open roads. The other day I went to my own county in Nyeri. They are opening up even weather roads. And what happens that where I come from when I was growing up, there were no beautiful houses. But I went there the other day. I think our house is the oldest because people are now able to travel from Nyeri all the way 18 kilometers to Kieni, and they are able to set up their homes. So I see more homes development because Kenyan people, the way we were born, we were born to own. However, I'm aware that if you look at the city of Nairobi, 80% of the people in Nairobi, they are renting. And Nairobi is owned by 20%. But it's that dream of every Kenyan person to have a home. And I'm happy that with our young population, there is better future. Look at the counties. Look at the cities that are upcoming. Yeah. Look at the upcoming towns. And I can tell you that we can be able to house our people. Remember, 67% of our population in the city of Nairobi, they are in the informal sector. And these people, they have a dream to have their own compound, their own home. So we foresee more uptick going forward.
Thank you very much, George Washiri, for speaking to us this morning. George is the CEO of Optiven Group. It's a real estate company that has been in operation for how long again, George?
We have been operating for the last 20 years to ensure that we house our Kenyan people.
Asante sana. Thank you very much for speaking to us today, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, George Oshiri is a good man. Time for us to take a break on KTN Home. We will continue these conversations on Spice FM. KTN Home will also be with us from 8 to 9. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice FM, Nakuru. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up.
Yep. So, real estate sector, George is very optimistic, and he's giving his reasons for optimism. He's saying we still have a huge population that would like to invest in real estate, especially for home ownership. We have still a lot of infrastructural development in the satellite towns of around the city. Like he keeps mentioning Kitengela, go to Ngong, go to areas of Thika and Kiambu County, those that are surround the Nairobi metropolitan region, and then go to other urban centers. In Mombasa, it's expanding. In Nakuru as well, expanding. And if you look at even parts like Naivasha, which are also really, really expanding and growing, going all the way.
Yes, he is absolutely right. But to understand, or to, in my mind, to present an actually accurate picture, I would like to look at the population of the employable Kenyan vis-a-vis the number of people who are buying these houses. This development, it's not as though there's one particular developer putting up 5,000 houses. And even if it was 5,000, if you look at the population of, say, these places, it's, as he correctly put it, it's a drop in the ocean, meaning the potential is there. That is not in doubt.
No.
What is in doubt is the ability
to pay.
Yes.
But also what you're forgetting, and what he has kept saying, is do not focus on the formally employed. There are very many people who are in the informal sector, and those ones are really participating in this. Very many of the houses that come up, go to those areas. It's not all of them that are for informal employment.
I agree with him completely.
So it's people who are earning an income through whatever means. They are in their own self-employment. They're running their businesses. They're able to save money. They're able to put together, pool resources in a circle, in a group, in an investment group, in a chama. Then they invest in houses.
Yes.
So that is actually the picture and the reality on the ground.
It is, but remember, all that was made possible before COVID. We hear of stories of people who work in Wakulima Market who've done wonderful things. We have people who are the border circles who've done wonderful things.
Yep.
It's a reality. But again, you put that against the backdrop of the population of people we have in this country. It's heartening to see people do this, but again, it's a drop.
It's still a drop, yes. And that's why the government comes in with the expanding opportunities so that a lot of people get into entrepreneurship, get into being able to earn an income. And even if you look at even those that are earning those low incomes, the 24,000 shillings and below, many of them have built homes, even if not in urban areas. You go back into the rural places, you'll find somebody who has an income of 10,000 shillings or less, but they've put up a home.
I agree completely. Once again, the income that someone earns, it doesn't paint a true picture of what somebody actually earns.
Yep.
That is understandable. I am simply emphasizing that with the COVID, that ability to earn the extra shilling is still there, but the opportunity to earn it is what has diminished.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
It's been compromised, and with any situation that has been compromised in that manner, it is going to it leans heavily on what you're able to do financially. It's not as it was before.
Yep.
And things would change. And we've heard it from what we're seeing now as situations having been affected. The recovery time is going to be very long. And people are not going to be able to do what they were able to do 3 years ago, by virtue of the fact that it's been affected. Because you can't say that, okay, just because you have the money to be able to do 1, 2, 3 things, and the entire industry has been affected, it compromises then your ability to move forward. It does for everybody.
I agree with you. Well, the part that I disagree is the outlook being elongated. I think this, yes, is a shock. The COVID period is a shock. But the recovery, just like we've seen post-election violence of 2007, 2008, many people lost incomes, many people were affected, businesses took a hit, but the recovery was much.
That was violence. This is a recession. Very different.
Are we in a recession? That's a conversation we'll be having.
Whether
we actually do agree that we are in a recession. That's a conversation we'll be having in the next hour. City Buga has, dived right into it. Are we in a recession? Is what we are witnessing here. an economic recession. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We thank you very much for joining us this and every morning. We are also live on KTN Home for the next 1 hour. Remember, you can post your comments as your conversations continue. Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. And also 40127 is our SMS number. Phone lines are 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Is Kenya in an economic recession? That's a conversation for the next hour. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
It's still quite slow on Mombasa Road this morning as we're trying to get then into the CBD. The early morning rains along Thika Road. You're going to have to get used to this because we're getting into that rainy season. However, it's very tempting to go faster than you should. But you should please try and take it easy. So, the stretch from the 75 outbound to Cabanas is usually crazy. The jam is crazy this morning, and that's what we are seeing, moving very, very slowly. In some parts, not moving at all. All right. Ngong Road, moving down. The visibility is extremely poor this morning. It's not moving in any way, shape, or form, meaning that you can't see as well as you should. So, we need to take that into consideration. Visibility very poor. The fog is very low this morning because of the rain. So, please be careful. So, sounds like a weather report, but it is actually affecting traffic. Spice FM KE, that's how you can get in touch with us on Twitter. Text us on 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We thank you very much for joining us this morning, and every morning we're live on KTN Home as well for the next 1 hour. On Spice FM, in Malindi, 97.7, in Nyeri is 90.9, Nakuru, 96.0, Eldoret, 96.7, in Kisumu, 102.5, and 87.9 in Mombasa. Nairobi is 94.4. CT, we begin this new hour with the proverb of the day.
When brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
When brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
I like such proverbs which are so straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, nothing convoluted. You don't have to tax your mind into trying to figure out what on earth they were trying to say.
You hear it, we move on.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's direct.
So tell us about this recession and how you see it.
Well, you know, there is, in the lives of human beings, there's always a discipline that tries to explain to you certain aspects of our lives. And when you have a situation where a pandemic has ravaged the entire global economy, then certain terms that have been used by the discipline specialists called economists come into being. And among the words you hear are recession, and you begin to wonder, what on earth does a recession mean? We were talking about booms, and we were talking about the decline in the boom. But when you have a situation where what was normal stops being normal, people lose their jobs, businesses decline, and there's a vicious cycle about this because people then, one, without jobs, don't have the money to purchase things. So the production levels have to go down because the demand isn't there. And when all these things come together, you then have a situation that has to be explained. And I think the people who are best placed to explain this are people who understand economics and finance. And one such person is Wangari Mwikia, who will help us with this discussion in trying to determine whether Kenya is actually in a recession or not.
Okay, but before she comes in, you are saying that you think we're in a recession.
I don't think I know we are in a recession.
Oh, okay.
I know we're in a recession simply because if I look at the tenets or the definitions of recessions as has been given by the experts, the indicators are as follows. 1, jobs are being lost. Economic activities are slowing down significantly. And more people who even had the ability to be able to work are unable to work. And for an economy to grow, these things need to be on the up and up. So, as I mentioned, when you don't have people with incomes, you don't have people who have the capacity and the ability to buy. And if you don't have the capacity to buy, it means you also reduce the circulation of the money. Essentially, economic activity slows down. And when it continuously slows down and not just slows down at a steady pace, but continues a downward spiral, then you have a situation where, in my mind, it fits a perfect description of what is normally referred to as a recession. Yes.
Do we have that, Ndu? Are you feeling that we have what he's saying?
Well, if you want to look at the definitions of recession, we have a general decline in economic activity. And you can look across board in Kenya and you can see that actually has happened. I think that this can be defined or this can be experienced in many different countries in the world at this time, whereby not in terms of people's buying power and ability to spend has been greatly reduced by virtue of the fact that other things have taken place. Enter COVID, for example. Enter the situation with the Kenyan economy before that, when spending was high, debt was high, and generally the economy had taken a hit. Now, when you bring in COVID, you see that certain things have happened which has affected people's ability to then spend, which is one of the major definitions of a recession.
Okay.
That's what it means.
But there's also the other term.
I think what we're looking at is when you think of the word recession, you're waiting for some big trumpet call and some big activity to happen. But you could see that, I think, and maybe as we talk about it, you'll see that at different points that you would see that it would recede. That you could be in a recession for shorter periods of time, for longer periods of time. But I think that once you look at the general decline of spending, you could very well then say that a recession is taking place.
But it's important to apply the word according to the actual usage and definition of the word. For there to be that depression, then the indicator...
Recession. There's a
recession,
difference
yes?
between the two.
For there to be that recession, then we'd have to get into that area where we are looking at the monitoring of the various aspects, which include GDP. Has GDP gotten into a slump for 2 consecutive quarters? And the information that is coming out to indicate that, okay, 2 successive quarters, this is what has happened. Is that the case that you're saying?
In Kenya?
Yep.
You don't even need to read into it. The one thing that, say, Kenya, KRA tells us frequently is just a clear reduction in the amount of money that they are able to collect.
But that's not a reduction in economic activity.
Actually, it does indicate, because
it's one of the indicators. It's not the one that completely defines the GDP.
No, I'm actually going by what is easy to understand.
If we come out and the data from the National Bureau of Statistics and then the other data from the Treasury comes and says, so economy, the GDP is at this point in this quarter, looking at quarter on quarter, this is where we are. Comparing with the previous quarter, this is where we were.
All right.
And the indicators will look at the sectors, the agricultural sector, the finance sector, all the other sectors. And there's then a general drop in activity.
Actually,
and
there's a very direct
activity.
correlation, because all the economic activities that lend itself to the aggregation that we call the gross domestic product, GDP, are economic activities. Now, what COVID has done is that even those activities have been reduced. Let's say, for instance, our exports, whether it is flowers, whether it is whatever it is that we do. There has been a reduction because the takers themselves have reduced what it is that they normally take, because they themselves have the same problem as us. So, simply because of that, and I said, take your pick, there is a very direct correlation, and all these enterprises are taxed by KRA based on what it is they produce and the money that they generate. It's a percentage, but the amount is determined by the level and the volumes of business. Now, if it means KRA is collecting a little less compared to before, it means there is less to collect. So clearly, it's a definite indication that economic activities are down, and it's a sum total of these that contribute to what you're calling GDP.
Let's bring in the expert to help us understand this topic. Wangari Moikia is a public finance management specialist. Wangari, good to have you again on the show. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Well, it's good to speak with you again. The last time we spoke was just before the budget, and we were looking at the budget preparations and what we were expecting to come out of the budget. Now here we are, and CT Muga is saying, "Look, guys, we are in a recession." Wangari, are we?
Well, I think what we need to do is first have a description of what a recession is. And if you look in the economic literature, there's no one kind of description of what a recession is, unfortunately. I mean, you would think that by now they would have come up with some sort of standard description, right? But what we term as a recession is generally a dip in economic activity for over about two periods. And that's what we are terming as a recession. So if we apply that to what's happening in Kenya, we could then say that we are in a recession, that economic activity, just as Siki Muga was saying, has taken a downturn. Now, as you know, the economy is never a static kind of level of activity, right? It always has its ups and downs. So in that sense, recessions always happen. You have peaks and you have troughs. But when, in the sense of what we're talking about, when we use the word recession, people say a recession essentially is when there's a significant downturn in economic activity. Sorry, my internet is not working very well. Apologies, guys.
All right.
When you have a continuous downturn in economic activity, that's when you have a recession. And when you have it for a prolonged period of time, then that's what you call a depression.
Depression, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's over time. So CT, is that over time?
You talked about 2 quarters since COVID struck. A quarter is 3 months.
Yep.
Count February to October. We've gone beyond 2 quarters.
Right. You're going to
And from the time COVID struck, our economic projections have been on a downward movement. I'm not calling it a spiral. It's just downward movement. Yes. And the downward movement has not decreased. It may have slowed down, but it has not decreased. We are still moving downwards. More people are being losing their jobs. People are earning less. There's all this shifting. Now, we are told that there are some sectors which are doing well, but they represent, again, a dot when you consider. The only thing that one may argue they represent is the amount of money that you find vested in that particular sector. It may be a great deal of money, but it doesn't represent the numbers if you're talking about the population of this country. And you see, the economic activities, for them to make sense for a country, it has to be cumulative. Those at the high end of it, those at the middle, and those at the low. And when you consider that we are a country that has the informal sector as its backbone, literally, then the informal sector have been very hard hit by the coronavirus. Really hard hit. So it means that as far as we are concerned economically, we are limping.
So basically, if we just go by the definition of what you're saying, what you're stating is the obvious. That COVID came, it affected livelihoods, it affected economic activity.
And it continues
All
to
right.
affect.
So then, why then bring up the issue of the recession? What is the impact or implication of a country going into recession?
It's just definition of what is happening. Giving it a technical definition and saying these things that are happening, they actually call a recession. That's really as opposed to a depression, which is an extreme form of what we are seeing and for a much longer period.
Right. I think though that it would be important to look at where you are, so that realization of where you are helps you to see the potential danger. Because it's interesting. You remain, if you're talking about recession, which you could be in here, and then 6 months later you're not, and then maybe some weeks later you are, remaining in that period or remaining in that condition for a longer period of time takes you to a place whereby it will be much more difficult to get out of, with all factors taken into consideration. Getting into a period of depression for the economy is actually a very, very dangerous place to be. especially when you're at a time in the world where global trends, for example, demand robust economic activities from all players, demand you to be in a place whereby you're able to compete, otherwise you're thrown out. And then you see things that are happening with countries like Greece and the like. So it demands of you to be at a particular place health-wise or healthy economically. Now, the recession, I think, would be a pointer to say, hold on, this is actually what is happening. Are there things that you can put in place to make sure that you don't remain in this position for a long period of time? Because then it will put you in a place that will be very difficult to get out of. So whereas it's making a definition or defining the state of things at the moment, I think they're also probably indicators as to where you don't want to be for a prolonged period of time. And to say that there are things that you can actually do as an economy, as a country, to either boost your status or make sure that you don't remain there for long.
You know, if you look at Kenya and you do not look at the rest of the world, because the rest of the world has also been affected by COVID, or perhaps if you look at the rest of the world or some of the bigger economies, perhaps it becomes even clearer and probably more obvious. Like, say, countries that have a big sector in the stock market, you find that the activities in that particular sphere often are a clear indicator of the economic activity and the economic standing of that particular country. Now, throughout the world, that sector has been hit. But the other thing that has happened right across the globe is unemployment. You do not hear of countries anywhere in the world that are increasing to employ people. No, there's a clear decline in employment. And that automatically has an immediate effect on the earnings and also the earnings of the government who tax these earnings, right? You also hear of governments coming in with packages to help their citizenry, those who are able to afford it, and those who are bringing, call it stimulus, giving people money to ensure that they actually have means to eke a living. All these activities are not activities that you'd have in a normal setting where people are going about their business normally. When someone requires help, it means they are disabled. That is why they require that particular help. And the disability here and as an economic one, which encompasses the financial disability. And that is what this country is going through and has been going through now steadily.
All right.
Yes.
So, did we have a recession before COVID? Wangari is still with us. Wangari, you can answer that.
So, to some extent, that yes, we did, but it wasn't an uncommon one. It was one of those, as I was saying, you have the normal kind of cyclical event of economic growth. But in 2018, our GDP growth was about 6.3%, and in 2019, it went down to about 5.4%. So by our definition, then you would call that a recession. But the economy in 2020 was by and large expected to rebound to about 6% again. But of course, COVID happened, and then we went back into a recession. But if I may point out one thing, when we talk about a recession, you can still have a recession. You can still have economic growth in a recession, and I think that's what is happening in our context in Kenya. Yes, we've gone down from 6.3 down to 5.4, and now it's about estimated about 1% by the big international institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. Although the National Treasury and the Central Bank have said our growth is more about 3%, it is lower, but it's still growth. We're not in the negative economic growth part of our economic activity. But like he was saying, it is a recession is something that you actually feel. You hear people losing their jobs, people getting pay cuts, people not being able to pay their loans, people not being able to sustain themselves, people moving to shags because they're not able to live in the expensive urban economies. And all of that is what it feels like to be in a recession. So by all means and by all definitions, what C.T. Muga was saying, yes, a recession is something you actually feel. It's not something that is, in theory in the books.
Wangari, just explain this to me. In economic terms, what defines growth? What is growth? How do you define it? How do we, if I were to look at it, what do I need to see in order to identify that this is now growth?
Well, the standard definition of growth is the GDP, right? So you have the consumption, you have investment, you have government spending, and then you have net exports. And it's essentially what a country in total, in aggregate, produces and the growth in that production is what we call economic growth. So if we're doing more business, if we're doing more manufacturing, if we're doing more industry, if we're exporting more than we're importing, all of that in aggregate counts towards our economic growth.
What would be there are obviously indicators that show that there's a recession taking place. Some of the things that you've talked about, when there's a loss of jobs, there are those who complain about them not being able to meet their needs as they normally would. What essentially would be the way that a government would seek to buffer that situation so that it doesn't stay for long, getting the place to depression that you mentioned earlier? There must be things that you can do.
Well, I think if we talk about what's happening in the pandemic today, it's a really unique situation because it's almost a forced recession, right? Everybody closed down their borders. Some of the counties in Kenya, we closed the borders around the counties. But the demand was there, the supply was there. Manufacturing, industry, everything was still going. But we had to put a stop on that. So in economic terms, it's really a unique situation that we're facing. And we need to ask ourselves, how do we continue to uphold their economy even in a situation like this? A country like Kenya, we are quite diversified. We are in different sectors. So we were not as much exposed to the economic hit as many other countries. We were definitely hit on the tourism side on one case, but on the other side, our agricultural sector was booming, and that's what has upheld us, I think, as we go, as our economy continues to grow, even by that 1%. Other sectors like the financial sector was also bolstered, and I think that, again, that's what has propped us up. I was listening to the person earlier talking about real estate and talking about the diaspora. But even in a recession, and in this situation, this particular pandemic, the remittances that were coming, that were used to coming from abroad, they were not coming anymore because in the developing countries, they were much harder hit when it came to the effect of the pandemic. So we don't have the luxury of relying on remittances or diaspora flows anymore. We need to look within. And I think part of the solution, part of what the government was doing, whether this was successful or not, was to really try to push that Build Kenya, Buy Kenya initiative, where we are saying we can't import goods and services from other countries. We need to rely on ourselves to grow. And I think there was an opportunity there. I'm not sure whether we grabbed it with both hands, but I'm hoping that, that will come out in the wash, whether we've been able to uphold our industries.
Some data that came from the central bank, I think around about May, June, was indicating that there was not a significant drop in the amount of remittances from the diaspora for some reason. And in fact, that actually formed some sort of discussion of, you'd have expected that because of the harsh economic times and the impact of COVID-19 in many of these countries. If you look at, for example, the Middle East, many Kenyans lost their jobs and they got back home, but there was still a significant amount of remittances arriving in the country around that time.
Well, I think that maybe you'd have to think about what that means when people are in a situation where they've been furloughed or they're not, they've lost their jobs. What is behavior of people? And naturally, you find that some people feel that it's safer to send their money home. They also saw that the numbers in the pandemic were not as high in African countries, Kenya included. And so maybe there was some sort of hedging where we're saying, look, if I don't have a job, I've been furloughed, I need to think about the future. Maybe I should invest in coming back home. And so maybe people are also thinking about, creating their nest eggs and not necessarily sending money home to support their families or things like that. Maybe sending money home so that they can start their own kind of little, build their own nest egg so that they come home to be in a more stable situation.
Let's take a break at this point. We are having a conversation on the state of our economy. We're in a recession. What is it that the government could do to show up the economy to make sure that we don't progress into a depression and that we continue having economic growth? Joining us this morning is Wangari Moikia. She's a public finance management specialist from Expertise Global Consulting. Let's take a break on KTN Home on Spice FM. Take a look at the weather and the roads, and then this conversation continues. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Malindi. The weather with Spice
Okay,
FM.
still wet morning in Nairobi. We're looking at 16 degrees, cloudy conditions for most parts of today. Highs of 22 and lows of 14. In Nakuru, it's mostly cloudy at 17. We'll see highs of 21. Looking like a wet day throughout Nyeri today. 16 degrees and rain coming down in sheets. Highs of 19 and lows of 14. Eldoret is partly cloudy at 15 degrees. Highs of 20 and lows of 13 with rain expected later. We're looking into Kisumu, where it's 22 degrees and highs of 26 will be experienced today with lows then of 19. Kakamega is mostly cloudy at 18 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 16. Thunderstorms are in the forecast here. And then it's mostly cloudy in Mombasa, highs of 29 and lows of 25, with rain expected later. Malindi is partly cloudy at 27 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 25, and highs of 23 in Kampala, with lows of 19. Looking like a wet afternoon in Dar es Salaam. The rain will come down later with highs of 31 and lows of 23. Johannesburg is mostly sunny at 19. It will be sunny conditions through the day with highs of 29 and lows of 15. And finally in Lagos, clear skies at 25, highs of 31 and lows of 24.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so the motorists along Waiaki and surroundings need to be extremely careful this morning. It's foggy and wet. Headlights rather need to be up. Use your wipers, drive with caution, and keep distance. Even keep distance in traffic this morning if you can, because the situation is quite, the visibility is quite low, guys. The fog is also quite low. Visibility is poor, rather. And it's a bumper-to-bumper situation. Also on Mombasa Road today, that's also moving slowly. The early morning rains didn't do any good to this road because now everybody's moving very, very slowly. Okay, there's some confusion also between Salga and Sachangwan. And we're seeing that problem this morning, guys. Extended traffic there. Also coming off of Thika Road, very slow right around the underpass at Pangani. So everywhere we look, guys, seems to be an issue today. Jogo Road as well, trying to get into the CBD to the City Stadium roundabout. That's going to take some time. So don't step on the gas, guys. Take it easy. And let's see if we can get out of this one safely at best. Spice FM KE. That's how you can get to us on Twitter if in case you run into something. Text us 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Latif Nduo Kosi Timuga. Joining us on the line is Wangari Moikia, Public Finance Management Specialist from Expertise Global Consulting. So, Wangari, you said it's possible to have a recession, but at the same time, the economy is still growing. The outlook from the IMF and the World Bank is that a GDP of hitting around 1% or thereabouts this year, from 5.4% in 2019, but the government is still insisting, no, it's got to be above 2%, 2 to 3%. Which one do you believe?
You know, it's really hard to say. There's so many different variables and so many different factors. It's really hard to say whether the IMF is correct or whether the National Treasury or even the central bank is correct. It really feels different for different people in the economy. The people in agriculture are resilient. The people in the financial sector are resilient. But then you look at tourism, and those guys will tell you, yes, growth by 3%, 2%, whatever it is. But if you look at people in tourism, if you look at people in the hotel industry, you know, industry, manufacturing, that have had a decline in economic growth, they'll tell you it looks more like the 1%. So it really is, it's hard to tell right now. It's a mixed bag.
Wangara, there's something that concerns me, and that is why I'm sort of like scratching my chin. I mean, we know about the problems that are brought about by recession, but surely, is there any silver lining to recession? Is there anything positive that comes out of a recession?
Well, for some people whose industries usually grow in recessions, they'll tell you that this is their silver lining. Like I said earlier, there are some people who actually benefit from being in a recession. There is always there are always winners and losers. But I think for us, and particularly now, I think there's some insight that we're getting into what the structure of our economy is, where we can hone in our focus, and where we can look for into the future. So, for example, we always talk about agriculture, and we're still in the dark ages of agriculture. But actually, agriculture is what held us up. So we need to have a new, renewed look at this sector and say, what can we do to prop this industry up, value addition, but also just really thinking about the bones of our infrastructure. We found out that in a recession or over the pandemic, people still needed tea, people still needed fruits, people were still, the demand for our agricultural products was high. So we need to also look at things like that. We're also now looking at the future and saying the resilient businesses that have stayed and survived this pandemic, those are the ones that probably we need to be looking at. E-commerce is on a boom now. So maybe we need to think about how can the government support e-commerce instead of taxing it, which is what we were seeing earlier, heavy taxes, but also how can we start to prop it up and take ourselves into the future, kind of leapfrog into the future with this kind of new insight.
And if you look at budgetary allocations over the years, the sectors that have been receiving the bigger chunk of budgetary allocation vis-a-vis those that don't receive such a high chunk, which ones would you say have then held us and carried us through this period?
Well, like I said, definitely agriculture. Agriculture has been taking a lot. Education also takes a big part of GDP. But as we've seen with education, it's been hit and miss, and actually very largely a miss with us. We talked about putting in the laptops. We talked about all these grandiose ideas that were, slow to start. And you can imagine if we had prepared ourselves earlier, if we had actually implemented the laptop project, we would be having a very different discussion right now. Now we're taking a big hit on human capital development because we've had a whole year of students, quote unquote, learning from home, because some are able to learn from home better and others not because of the resources and the economic levels experienced in the homes. And even having a parent there to teach the child is, it's not a guarantee. So I would say, even as we're putting a lot of money into these sectors, how are we using it? What is the value for money? And how are we thinking about the future in how we're investing in our country?
And what do you see is the way in which this is being done? Because I think it's important. Because then we also have even if it is an image that you then put to the people of the country to understand what exactly is going through. Because the responsibility of then what is being done with what is available is on the government, whichever way we want to look at it. So what, from your point of view, what actually is being done to make a better situation for tomorrow? What is actually being done? How are these resources being used? In what state is the economy right now? What state is it really, really in?
Well, the pandemic has really revealed that our economy could do a lot better. And I say this kind of in broad strokes because it's across the board, right? In agriculture, we're not doing the value addition that we need to be doing. Education is struggling. Healthcare was a big one in this pandemic. If it had hit us in the way the world was saying it would have hit Africa, we would have been a very different space right now. We've talked about the big four projects. If we had a lot of progress in those areas, we might have been in a very different situation. Universal healthcare, agriculture, housing, manufacturing, all of these as part of our vision. If we had put our resources and bolstered this and not seen a lot of these kind of corruption scandals, misuse of financing, I think we would have been in a very different space. But I think the question is also about value for money. even as we're investing in universal healthcare, even as we're putting money to education, are we getting bang for our buck? And I think that's one of the fundamental questions that the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget often try to help us to see. But even when the audit reports come out, I have to confess, they do outline some of the key challenges that we're having, but there's no redress. So if we say in an audit report that the value for money is low, what is Parliament and government actually bound to do to address these issues that are coming in the audit report? And I think from a public finance perspective, that could be bolstered.
So you say
more.
that this lacks in our audit reports. And this is something that should be included, because now you're coming up with a report and then you're not saying then what is it that should be done to enhance the utilization of the money.
Yes, I think the audit report does highlight many of the challenges that we're facing, but the challenge comes into addressing those the things that are coming out in the audit reports. We always say that Kenya is a land of fantastic laws, but the implementation of that law and adherence to the rule of law is where we struggle. And so we have a lot of good parameters in the Public Finance Management Act. We talk about the audit, making sure that the audit is about 1 year, is on time, and it's usually 1 year lag because you have to audit the previous 2 previous years. But we were seeing like 2, 3, 4 years lag, and the Public Finance Management Act says you're not supposed to have this serious lag. But there's no real kind of progress towards this kind of goals. But there has been some work. I have to give credit where credit is due. There has been some work with the Auditor General to try and improve some of these parameters with support from institutions like the World Bank and IMF, etc. We are seeing some changes. But I also have to say, we shouldn't always wait for the development partners to come in and try to prop us up. Surely we can do a lot of these things on our own. Surely we don't need people to crack the whip all the time to get us to where we need to be. We need to build our own kind of strength and resilience when it comes to dealing with the rule of law and dealing with how to take care of and improve the condition of our own country.
Actually, we do need someone to crack the whip, because if you look at our track record, the one thing we seem to do very, very, very well is the very thing you said we should not do. At what point do you think we will be able to gather our wits about us and be able to put the right foot forward and do what we need to do? Because it isn't as though the leadership doesn't know what they ought to do. They do know. Anyway, that was an aside. What I wanted to ask is this. Okay.
I was struggling to figure out what I was going to say about that.
No.
It
was an aside. It was just an aside. Now, what I wanted to ask is, okay, we are in a recession. Is there a way out of it for the individual? How does an individual get out of this recession? Here I am. I'm finding myself in this recession. My pay has been cut. There's a likelihood I would lose my job. There's a likelihood I will be thrown out of my house. I can't pay my mortgage. How do I sort out these problems?
Well, this is one of those things that an individual may not be able to, on their own, get out of this recession. There's going to need to be a lot of government intervention. And there has been some attempts towards that. Whether that has been successful is something I think that we will debate about now and going into the future. So, for example, if you've lost your job, you don't have a roof over your head, definitely the government needs to come in strongly with cash transfer programs now and social protection programs. Now, social protection programs right now deal with small subsets of the economy. Our challenge was how to expand that to kind of the increased number of people that became vulnerable. One of the challenges that we did have in our approach to dealing with the pandemic is that when we closed the borders, we didn't allow people to manage their own incomes and manage their own standards of living by migrating back to shags. So, for example, if I'm not able to live in Nairobi, or I've come in from Kakamega and I'm living in Kibera slums because I had a job and then I lost my job, if with the border, I was not able to relocate back to Kakamega so that I can manage my income and also to survive the times. So I think that kind of mixed basket posed a lot of challenge for us. But things like social protection programs, cash transfers programs, but also funds to prop up small businesses, to allow small business to continue to thrive and survive, well, not necessarily thrive, but at least to survive the period, so that when things start to stabilize, they're able to pick up and start to generate income on their own. It can be a challenge even to think about which business are going to survive, which businesses are not going to survive. But for now, that's just a risk we have to take. The government just provide funding for SMEs, and then it will all kind of come out in the wash, I think, at the end of the day.
The taxation regime that the government seems to want to institute, even on some of these small-scale businesses, does it really help us get out of this situation, or does it exacerbate the condition that we actually find ourselves in?
Well, there were some rafts of tax reliefs that the government did give. So, for example, reducing VAT, reducing the PYE. But I always maintain that, the business landscape in Kenya is mostly informal. So many of the businesses were not paying these taxes in the first place. So even as the government did try to put in some work to providing reliefs, for about 80% of the businesses which are informal, this was not felt. They did feel it in some way when it comes to VATs, because some of the supplies and the inputs to their businesses did get those VAT reliefs. But by and large, I think a large swath of the economy, and I'm talking about the informal sector, was not propped up or supported in the way that it could have been. And I think this is a challenge with the informality of the Kenyan economy. It's hard to pinpoint, it's hard to identify who these people are and how to give them resources as a group.
I would like you to repeat that last statement you've made, that they are hard to identify.
They're hard to identify and hard to pinpoint and focus in terms of providing relief.
Yeah, well, you sound like, what you're saying resonates with something I read in a World Bank report. The informal sector is not difficult to identify, if you ask me. They're even not, if the government can come up with a system of taxing them, it means they are not difficult to identify. And they're even able to categorize them into what it is that they do. I don't think that the government has not been able to streamline them and actually compartmentalize them and understand what it is they do and how they contribute to the economy. Now, that is my thinking. You may have a contrary thinking, but if my thinking is correct, then helping this particular sector should not be difficult, should it?
Well, I think it is difficult to identify, because to identify the people, you talk about them in general, but if you're going to give specific reliefs to specific businesses, that means these businesses have to self-identify. And the nature of informality is they're trying to operate under the radar. And most informal businesses will not want to come forward and say, I'm an informal business, I need 1, 2, 3 in terms of relief, because when things stabilize, then it's likely that these people then will be included in the tax bracket in the formal sector, and that is not what they want. So it is possible to talk about them in aggregate, but to individualize and say, these are the reliefs that we want to provide to specific informal sector groups, then it becomes difficult to do.
I'm saying that if we're looking at an economy which is depressed, things have seemed to kind of fall apart. It would be the desire, I believe, of the different arms of government and the different agencies tasked with the responsibility of the economy in some areas to put it back together. I know it sounds like kind of like Humpty Dumpty. Now, how do you do this when you already are in such high debt, whereby a huge amount of the budget of money that comes in goes towards paying debt? There's already a debt problem. Then you enter into a pandemic issue as well. Things already were not going well. How do you then revive it? Because I think a lot of times a larger amount of the population sits and thinks, my goodness, we're in dire straits. How are we ever going to get out of this one? With the debt problem, with the pandemic issue, with the saying, okay, inflation dropping. Where do you start from? Putting the building blocks together for people to understand this is essentially what should happen.
Well, over the pandemic and because of the depressed economic activity, we were not able to meet our budget objectives. So even when the tax reliefs were being given, that means that there's going to be lower revenues to the national government. And these are the revenues that actually finance our day-to-day in Kenya, right? The goods and services that we get from government come from the tax revenues that we're paying. So even by doing that, even by providing those reliefs, the government in essence was shooting itself in the leg in order to save the other leg in a sense, right? And knowing that we would not be able to achieve our budget objectives because our revenues were low. And this is where resources from places like the IMF and World Bank now come in. And this is kind of the role of the IMF, role of these kind of international institutions that say, look, we're in dire straits. This is a situation that is not tenable. In order for us to help you to continue to provide some of the essential services, we're going to come and give you some resources to plug the deficit. But then, of course, then there's a challenge because, the COVID fund, we're not actually privy to how this fund was used. We're not sure whether it went into healthcare to increase the number of beds or medical supplies. We're not sure whether it went to SMEs. We're not sure how this money was used, right? So I think that's also a big lacuna for us, where we say, yes, we got all this money from the development partners to prop us up, but did we use it in the right way? And are we feeling it in the economy to say that, thank God we got this money because now we're able to survive? It's really unclear.
Someone has just sent a message saying the corruption is the monster in the room. And even if you look at how we finance our budget and the areas that we focus our attention on when we are allocating money in the budget, those are the ones that have been exposed seriously. Look at education and how much money then it takes in the budget every year and what has happened in the education sector during this COVID-19. Healthcare. So right now, since the last budget, there has been a deliberate increase in the amount of money that is going in towards healthcare, looking about universal health coverage. But even before that, the attention that was going towards healthcare, not only from government, but also from development partners and those that have been coming to support our healthcare system in terms of budget, the amount of money that is in the healthcare system over those many years, and yet the healthcare system is left exposed. What does that tell us? I mean, is this not a moment for us to sit back and reflect and say, we are in a recession, we are also finding ourselves facing a pandemic and not being able to know what we are doing, and yet we've been financing and getting all the support to these particular sectors that are now completely exposed?
If you look at, first we start from looking at who deals with healthcare. And if you look at the Constitution, healthcare has been largely devolved. We recently did a study with my firm Expertise Civil Consulting. We did a study on how public finance management either helps or hinders health service delivery. And within that study, we did find that within the county government budgets, health was by far the largest and highly funded sector. So I think there's no kind of doubt that the counties are putting a priority in health. The question comes into the structural processes that go into financing and providing goods and services within the healthcare system. What we did find was that the planning processes are not linked to the budget processes, and the budget processes are not linked to the implementation in terms of procurement of goods and services. So that you may be giving 30% of your budget, for example, to health, but if you're not fulfilling the health plans of the health facilities, the ones at the grassroots level to the more county headquarter level health facilities, or if you're not providing the goods and services that they need, if you're not providing them the right personnel, then you find that even with all the money in the world, you still will not get the goods and services that you need, even with all the funding that's coming from the COVID funding. If it's not coming into a system that is structured, that provides goods and services according to need and according to the demands or disease burden within a particular jurisdiction, then you will still have the same outcomes. So it comes in planning and in structuring and understanding how public finance, the finances you receive, actually translates into goods and services on the ground, which we are struggling a lot with in Kenya.
Is the gap the lack of understanding, or is the gap a deliberate lack of implementation or even thinking beyond the planning? So you put in the money in this sector, you ensure that there's a lot of money, and then you can go around the county telling people, you see what we are appropriating a lot of money into the healthcare system, but you're doing the kind of things that you're doing are not really in line with what you had planned to do, so that corruption then is able to thrive. Is this not deliberate?
there is some problems around procurement. I will definitely say that, and there are also questions around corruption. You do see some cases. I'll talk about one case that I saw in one county where they went through a tender process to procure incubators. And they, within what they have is a procurement committee that actually says this is what we need to be able to provide the service that is needed within the county. So, for example, the procurement committee would include a finance person, it would include someone, a medic, and a technician to say these are the types of incubators that we need. But in this particular county, they had not constituted that procurement committee. So whoever came up with the idea or the specifications for the incubators was not the right person, I say, to say it simply. And so what happened is that they put out a tender, they procured incubators, and these incubators ended up burning some of the children, these premature children within the incubator, because it was not of the right specification and it was bought from some questionable vendors. So then that comes in, so that's what I'm saying. Like, you can go through this whole plan, but if it's taken over by the unscrupulous processes, you spent all this money, but now all those incubators had to be removed and taken to some storage because none of them could be used. So that is essentially a lost procurement process and a lost amount of money that could have actually been used for the good of the county. And these are the types of process and challenges that we're seeing at the county level.
Wow. All right. So now, looking at where we are now, I mean, always trying to say, okay, trying to get out of this, looking at the numbers around the world, especially when we're talking in likes of COVID, things are not getting any better at the moment. It looks like wherever we look, things are getting worse. Looking in the Western Hemisphere and on the East, right here where we are, things are getting worse. Are there things that individuals can do? And when you want to look at it from a macro level, when you look at it from the national point of view, or micro individuals, are there things that you can do to make sure that even as the rainy day continues, that your protective gear is still working, even as bleak as it looks at the moment?
Yes, nice. Like you said, now is the time to dig deep. And I think for individuals, it is a tough time, and there's no silver bullet. I have to say there's no kind of quick solution to say this is how we get out of it. But I think in the medium to long term, we need to think about diversifying, even within our own sectors. If you were in the tourism industry, and tourism will come back. It's not like it will die forever. But how do you then future-proof yourself? What have you learned from this experience? How do you then, if you had a biashara on the side, which most Kenyans have, you have your real job and then you have your biashara, what kind of things can you do to diversify your income? And diversify broadly enough that it's not a double whammy. And this can be a hit or miss. I know someone who had diversified, quote unquote, and they had a school and a hotel. But who would have thought that in a pandemic, both would be decimated, right? So, yeah, exactly. So it's really, you can't really say, this is what you should do. But the general principles of diversification and also looking to the future to say, what are we learning? What can we apply to the future, I think would do us good, individually and as a nation.
Always a pleasure.
That
one. Both.
It's both pressure and pleasure.
Today is the day.
Always a pleasure speaking to you, Wangari, every morning as you tune in and also as we have you on the show. Asante sana for joining us today, Wangari. Wangari is a public finance management specialist with Expertise Global Consulting, giving us insights on where we are, as an economy. We wish you a good day, Wangari.
Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Time for us to say goodbye as well to our audience on KTN Home. Thank you very much for joining us from 7 o'clock to now, coming up to 7 minutes to 9 o'clock. But the conversations continue on Spice FM every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. The station broadcasts on 94.4 in Nairobi, in Mombasa, 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret. In Nyeri, we are on 90.9. In Malindi, 97.7. See you again tomorrow, KTN Home.
Spice FM, Nyeri.
All right, so COVID comes, COVID exposes very many things about our economy. We get to a point where, yes, we have this proper recession in the economy. And looking at the government response during this time, are you satisfied that what the government is doing is enough to ensure that we don't even continue the recession and go into a depression? CT.
If we could directly translate what the government says into action, the answer to that would be yes. The government is doing even more than enough. But if we simply look at what the government has been doing, we would say no. To put it very simply, the government is not doing enough.
I think the narrative is that the bare minimum that has been offered to Kenyans in terms of those who've received, and if we look at the numbers, with all the different packages and cash transfers that we're looking at blocks of 100,000 people, another block of another 120,000 people who got these cash relief funds for about 6 months or so, which came to an end, right? Then we saw Kazim Tani, right? Kazim Tani, that took care of at least jobs and income coming in for some time. That also staved off, right? It would be that it was seen that the government did something. And by virtue of the fact that the government did something, then all Kenyans should be in applause and say, thank you, at least they tried. Now, it's very sad once you want to put this against the face of what some other countries were doing. And you would say, well, no, they had more financial might to be able to do this than Kenya did. And what we're saying is that if you were going about things the way you should when it comes to an accountable government, then when things like this come along, you wouldn't have to struggle as much to take care of your people if you did it right. It sounds like a tall order, but guess what? It is a tall order when you're taking care of your people.
If you talk to people who understand how government works, what they will tell you is that they even come up with good plans that will actually bring about the desired end.
Yes.
But it never sees the light of day. It's as simple as that. There are some individuals who come up and say, no, put that aside. This is what we're going to do.
This is what we're going to do.
Yes. And that which they say we're going to do guarantees that we will not achieve what we wanted. Guarantees.
Yeah, because then you ask yourself, right? So if 1 trillion shillings, 1 trillion, you don't know the number we keep talking about that seems to have found its way out the window with a budget year. If 1 trillion shillings was not lost, just imagine for a minute what you would be able to do for the people of the country in a depressed economy. If it wasn't lost, maybe you wouldn't even have a depressed economy if the monies that were allocated for doing certain things actually saw the light of day. You wouldn't have that problem, whereby people would be languishing. You would say, actually, you know what? Because we've kept things really neat and we've colored within the lines, we've done things the way in which we're supposed to do. We're not suffering in the way in which we see maybe others suffering.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, it sounds like so cut and paste, but truly that's what it is.
You know,
if you're not losing money, then you would be able to take care of your people.
Mtula Kilonzo talked about the fourth estate and
the fourth arm.
The fourth arm of government and called it the Ministry of Finance. There's a fifth one. And the fifth one is the one we don't talk about often, and they're the ones who are responsible. See, their agenda is, despite and in spite of everything that we're saying, they are determined that they must make money come what may. So moral issues, ethical issues.
Whether there's a pandemic, people are dying, doesn't matter.
That is quite irrelevant. They seem to focus on how do we get money out of treasury to go into projects which we know will never see the light of day. That seems to be the focus.
Because the money will come to our pockets.
Yes, they will. But they have to leave treasury in order to...
Yes.
And they do leave treasury. And then they do a disappearing act on us. A complete Houdini.
Stuff that the likes of Blaine would be surprised, shocked. What? Somebody else can do this too.
Imagine. At such a grand scale.
I'm telling you.
And continuously.
It's actually sad that you see that money that has been, when you look at the money that has been lost or unexplained or whatever it is that happened, and then you take that in your mind and then you equate it to the problems that you're currently facing in terms of people having lost livelihoods, which the government should be able to buffer, in terms of, industries, entire industries that have crashed as a result of something like this. And the money that has been lost could save those particular sector 3-4 times over. It's very sad.
But do think about it. We keep talking about corruption being a problem, impunity, corruption. Corruption is a manifestation of impunity. And then 2 sectors of our government that would help fight this, the judiciary. Say, the DPP. and the affiliate institutions that deal with these things, they keep talking about not being given the requisite
Controls.
yes
And
fi-
resources.
and resources. So are we really? And yet the resources being diverted elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yes. So you have to ask the question. We can talk about the seriousness, but really, do our actions really indicate the level of seriousness we like to continuously shout about?
How serious are we? Also, that exposure of if something like a shock like this comes in, and the areas where you've been claiming that you're focusing all your attention on, like Wangari was telling us, in the counties, the focus is clearly in healthcare. And now counties are complaining, are crying, just because 80 people have been admitted in hospitals with COVID in your county. You're even already starting to transfer staff from hospitals to others, and you're already saying that you can't get oxygen, you cannot get masks, you cannot feed those people. What are you talking about? So what have you been spending money doing on?
Because
these
every year
areas?
that money you budget for is spent.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
So
goes
what has it
somewhere.
been doing? And if you follow Derek, you will find that the very things that they said they spent the money on, they did not spend the money
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Money on.
And that's why the Auditor General picks it
Keeps-
up and says,
There's a
explain
problem.
Value
Yeah.
for money.
Yes.
It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we will talk about those county governments and how they are ranked by their own citizens. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so Mombasa Road
Traffic.
is the thing. Okay, so let's look out of Mombasa Road for just 1 minute, right? At the overpass at just after Blue Post towards Kennel, there is a canter that was carrying vehicles. You know how they carry the vehicles on top? Now it has decided to collide with the bridge. So it's stuck there. The vehicles that it's carrying have been destroyed, and now that is causing traffic on that road. So if you're headed in that direction, please be aware of what lies ahead. This one is a mess. I'm telling you, it doesn't look good at all. Then we're going to look at Mombasa Road, where we still have some problems here and there. There's a bit of a hold up right around Cabanas, heading then towards Nyeri Stadium roundabout. So where we see a problem now is the Uhuru Highway between Nyeri Stadium roundabout, then all the way to Westlands. So that one that we're looking at, where we talked about it's the Delview flyover, Thika Muranga Highway. That's where we have a problem this morning. A little bit on Thika Road getting towards the Pangani underpass, but it is okay, not too bad. Spice of MKE, guys, talk to us in case you get stuck somewhere, and we should be able to sort it out for you. Sawa sawa? Sawa.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
It's 2.5
the
minutes after
only
9.
way to
This
start
is
your
Kenya's
day.
biggest conversation. The live stream is still up. Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and spicefm.co.ke. City Muga. It's ni wakati mwingine wako wewe City Muga kutupatia methali ya siku.
Okay.
Kwa Kiswahili tafadhali.
Boli kwangu.
Boli kwako.
Okay. When brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate.
When brothers fight
To the death.
a stranger inherits their father's.
It stands to reason when you're dead, you know, it's a bit difficult to inherit anything unless you want to inherit in the afterlife. But what is certain is this. When there is enormous division, because for you to get into a fight to the death, there has to be division. Now, that division always opens up an avenue for people who ordinarily wouldn't have had a foot into your business to have a big foot in your business. And sometimes the division doesn't manifest itself. It's a fight that actually is a manifestation of the division and the extent to which the division existed.
Indeed.
Yes. And should I say also the intensity of the fight?
Higher. So, just like we've been saying, we're talking about the recession. People have had their incomes severely affected. What that resilient spirit of the Kenyan is what also emerged during this COVID-19 pandemic season. Small businesses have looked at what is the best thing I can do, and they've adapted and seen, all right, so let's go online. There are those that have gone online and basically just found a way to ride this disruption that has been brought about by COVID-19. So as Spice FM, we have decided let's partner with Google, and so that we can help open the doors to the opportunities that exist online for businesses willing to seize these free virtual tools that are available on Google's Grow 2.0 platform. And we have said that for the next couple of weeks, we'll be having a conversation with an expert from Google. And the expert is the SME lead for East Africa, Rosemary Momanyo-Pio. And she's also joining us now this morning. Good morning, Rosemary.
Good morning. How are you all doing today?
We are well, and it's good to see you.
Great. Good to see you as well.
So yesterday we looked at what's happening in the area of John. Do we still have Rosemary on the line? Just find out, and then we can continue the conversation. So yesterday we looked at, all right, so Google has these tools that are available that can help you to get online, to put your business online, to make sure that then you can be found online. And we asked, what is that consumer journey? What is it that somebody goes through before they make the purchase? And Rosemary was explaining to us that how you actually, many of the consumers do, is you start with that trigger of, I need something. I need to buy a new phone, or I need to buy this or the other product or this service. Then you go online and you search, you start doing your research. What is it that, who offers this? And you also get in that phase of research, you're also comparing, seeing reviews and getting into other platforms, seeing what people are saying about this particular product or this particular provider of that product or service. And then you make your decision, all right, I'm going to settle with this provider. And you then make your purchase. You can either make your purchase online, or many in terms of this country make their purchase offline. So you'll just now call the provider and tell them, I've seen you and I've seen that you're selling this and the other, and I'd like, where are you located? Can I come and see it? Or can you deliver it to wherever I am? And this is what's happening. Now, how do you get yourself seen during that research phase? And that is what we will be discussing and seeing how we can help you get there. But first of all, let's also understand the internet landscape, because there are many people who will tell you, yeah, that is just for the young people who spend their time on the internet. But the other people like to go to shops to do their research. Maybe not. And that's why Rosemary now is going to give us a brief review of the landscape of Kenya in terms of digital usage. Rosemary, what do we see so far?
Yeah, so looking at the numbers, it's very quite interesting, Eric. So in terms of numbers, 53% of Kenyans currently are online, those who are 16 plus of age and older. And that's a big number from the last study that we did that was done about a few years ago. And when you look at the number of Kenyans currently now who actually own a smartphone, 92% of Kenyans own a smartphone. And that's broken down into three categories. 42% own real smartphones, right? 37% own a basic smartphone or a basic phone. And then 23% of them own a feature phone, the Mulika Mwizi type of phone. And then in summary, roughly 12.2 million Kenyans currently use the internet every single day. And that's a very important number there. Moving on in terms of how we access media, of course, you guys are the experts here. Radio Number One is by far the most used platform based on the CAF study. But if you think about daily internet usage, it comes as a number two and a really big one for people who are able to come online and watch media online as well. And then I want to walk you through the typical demographics of the overall Kenyan user. So interestingly, 58% of them are male. And that's interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on views on that one as well. 81% of them are between the age of 16 and 34 years of age. 41% of them are self-employed. And then a lot of them spend at least 6,000 shillings to pay for their average mobile phone. So I'm just going to pause there and see if you have any questions on those numbers. But interesting, what are your thoughts on the views of it being mostly skewed towards men versus women? I'd like to get your thoughts, Eric, and do as well on that stat.
Let me ask the question, since you have these demographics, of these demographics, how many women own smartphones and how many men own smartphones?
So we did a random survey just to kind of get an idea of the numbers. So in terms of the percentage, it's roughly 58% of the users who are online tend to be men. So the balance then would be women.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if I look at that balance, does it talk about usage or does it talk about ownership?
Those who are actually online, internet users.
Okay. But do you have data for people who actually share phones?
Well, we have been able to see that people, if you look at those who are in the lower demographic areas, they tend to have maybe one phone in the house and they share it. And that's normally people who are in the SE class that are in the lower segment. But those who are on the higher segments, they tend to have one phone or actually 1.5 phones per person.
Okay, this higher segment, what should we say are the indicators of that position that they have been placed in? What makes them higher? Is it their income? Is it their usage of the internet? What is it?
It's mostly their income level and their lifestyle.
All right. And so the income level would be at how much in terms of Kenya shillings per month?
We looked at roughly those who can actually afford a smartphone and those who can afford to spend about 6,000 shillings for a basic mobile phone.
Okay.
So that's the indicator.
It's interesting to see that divide in terms of 58% of people who go online on a daily basis are male, and then the balance is the female, and also looking at then the ownership of a smartphone. Interesting to see that 82% of the people who go online, the male who go online, own a smartphone. That's a very high percentage. Correct. That means that the smartphone penetration in the country has really grown.
It has really grown. Exactly.
Are we able to then see beyond that now? Because I mean, if we're just, I'm trying to put it against the backdrop of more and more people going online to shop, or more and more people going online to present their businesses. So then assumption is that a lot of this is being done by the smartphone. Now, do we see, even with these high numbers, that people are using this online experience to go on and shop or to tend to their business?
That's a very good question. Let me go one slide forward and walk you through the response to that, what they spend their time online. So in terms of what they do there online, about 35% of them spend 5 minutes, 30 minutes online, and 34% spend 30 minutes to an hour online. And that's a lot of time spent a day online. And then you look at what they do online, to answer your question, So most of them visit social networks, as you know. So the regular Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, etc.
Right.
A lot of them use messaging apps. 71% of them use messaging apps, which is huge.
This is like WhatsApp and the others.
Exactly, like WhatsApp, exactly. And then 54% of them use search engines. 43% of them watch videos online. In terms of what they do, in terms of what the content, it's mostly news, sports, and weather.
Yep.
And then they have they do video chats, which is the next big category. And then using local apps and websites. For example, like your banking app would be one, or Jumia could be another one, local apps and websites. And then your point here is about looking for product information. So that is also quite big. 24% look for info about that. I'm looking for a smartphone. What's the effect behind that? They listen to music online. They play games online. They check maps and directions. And then they purchase products and services online. So that's what they spend their time doing in that order. To answer your question.
Okay. Talk about demographics again. Can you divide these groups into age?
Yes. So that's a good question. So right now, if I could just take you back one more point there. Yes. The bulk of them are between 16 to 34 years of age. That's 16. The bulk of the users. 16 to 34 years of age, right? And this will change when I talk about YouTube in a few minutes. Yes.
So 16 to 34, that's the majority that's online. And then what is the next big category?
The next big category now in terms of usage is now 34 plus,
Yep.
and then of course 45 plus.
Okay. What also is emerging as interesting, and I've seen in that slide on what the person is actually doing when they're spending their time online on a daily basis. Like you've said, number one thing is that they're going onto social media. There's also business that's happening on social media. Are you able to capture and tell what exactly they're doing on social media, or do you just know that they're online, but they're on the social media platforms? This could be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the rest.
Yeah, it's more that they're online on those social media sites. We can't really tell exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
But when they go into YouTube, we're able to tell that they're able to spend a lot of time watching news, listening to sports highlights, recap, and of course the weather. And also what's also quite big is entertainment and comedy. I'll walk you through that in a few seconds as well.
There's something that also you mentioned there, that is there's a 14% e-commerce penetration. Just explain that as well.
Right. So a lot more Kenyans right now are spending time buying things online. Apps like Jumia have made that very possible. Our big partners like Safaricom are enabling that to mobile payments, and of course Airtel as well as Telcom. So allowing us to be able to conduct payments is very important. So people are able now to place an order and be able to receive products online. And if you're a merchant, you're able now to receive payments coming through to you from these mobile payment platforms. So because of that, now we're able to have a growth in e-commerce, which allows people to be able to conduct businesses online. Before it was quite tough because we're not really much a credit card company or country, if I can use that word. But with mobile payment enabling us to be able to receive and make payments, we're seeing a real huge growth in e-commerce penetration, both from a merchant perspective as well as from a user perspective as well.
Is this the
There's more trust.
Sorry, is the definition of e-commerce only restricted to what we know as e-commerce? That there's an e-commerce platform, say like the Jumias and the rest, or does it also include when you advertise your goods online and then people ask and you make the purchase offline? For example, going onto social media using the messaging apps. We know very many people who will advertise or market their products and services through WhatsApp groups or through some groups, closed groups or open groups on Facebook, for example. Is that also included in the 14%?
Not really. So e-commerce is more around being able to receive and make payments. But then what you're talking about is more of a marketplace where you're able now to put your products on WhatsApp and then be able to advertise them on your various social media platforms. But when you go to the next step of now, I've put my products online, they're now visible, and I'm now able to sell and receive payments. Now you go into now that transaction of e-commerce and being able to now be able to be seen as a person who is doing e-commerce online by being able to make and receive payments. That's the big distinction.
Okay. Take us through video. You said you still had some data on video and video usage.
Yeah. So in terms of video, people are quite active on video in Kenya, and 60% of them use YouTube daily, weekly, or monthly. And that's quite a big number for Kenya. We are quite active on YouTube. On demographics, which is quite interesting for me, which is the fact that on YouTube specifically, 67% of the users are men, and 33% of the users are female. On age group, 52% of them are between 18 and 24 years of age. 43% of them are between 25 and 44 years of age. And then 45 years of age and older are only 5%. So I'll pause there and just have you just digest that information. It's quite interesting.
What are they doing as what kind of videos? Do we know the kind of videos that, for example, the men are watching and what kind of videos the women are watching, or even the 45 years and above? This 5% of videos that they're watching.
So there's only 3 big categories in Kenya that are quite big. Number 1 is music, which I'm sure you know is that demographic.
Yep.
Number 2 is, it's mostly music. 59% is mostly music. 39% is comedy, so people love to laugh, and of course, which we all enjoy. And then 33% is news. So there's 3 main categories. So you understand why it's heavily skewed towards men. Comedy, news, and then music. So women would tend to be more around maybe music, some comedy, but also a lot of how-to videos are also watched a lot by women.
Okay.
And lifestyle content.
What does this information then mean or translate to somebody who's thinking, I mean, I have a business and I'd like to tap into an online audience? How then does this information relate to them?
Yeah, so it's good to know that people are actually online, because if I were wondering who is online, what are they doing, now it's confirmed. There are Kenyans who are online. There are Kenyans who are doing e-commerce. The skew might be more skewed towards men, but women are also online as well. So if you're a merchant, if you're a business owner, it's so important to you to remember that there is an online audience and they come daily, whether it's to search for your products, to watch your content, to research product information before they make a purchase. So if you're a business owner, it's important for you to be able to engage and be found on those various platforms, because that's where people will be able to come, engage, and find you.
And those that search come online and they're searching for business-specific information. What do they look for?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually, Eric. So two things. One is there's been a growth of about 180% of searches of where to buy a product or where to find a service. So those queries are growing by 180% every single quarter, which is quite big. That means people are looking for where they can find info, whether it's your product or it's your service. There's also been a 52% rise in searches that include near me, like we said before, plumber near me or restaurant near me. So if you're a merchant and you have a restaurant or you're a plumber, you're providing a service, people will be looking for those near me queries, and so you must be there to be found by them as they look for you in this space.
Right. Okay. So just what you're saying now points to then the necessity, we can call it a necessity, but then the importance then for businesses who are in this space, and when I talk about this space, I mean where you're being looked for.
Yeah.
Necessary then for you then to be in the online space, because these are the searches that people are naturally inclined to. These are what people are looking for anyway. So if then you would want yourself to pop up in the results of their search, then you would want to be in this space. Can you give, some pointers towards that to say the importance then of being in a space where people are looking anyway?
Yes. Number one, be found. So make it easy for people to find you. So like number one, I'll just say have a business profile. Number two, have a website. Number three, where possible, if you're able to have video content, engage, put it out there. If it's about product reviews, make sure you ask for them, because that will help you rise up on those queries. So 3 points: have a business profile, have a website, encourage people to review you to help you rise up on those results.
Rosemary, we thank you very much for joining us today. Of course, we'll be speaking with you tomorrow, same time, from 9 a.m. Rosemary is the Google expert. She's a resident Situation Room Google expert. She is the SME lead for East Africa, helping us to get to understand the online marketplaces, how to get your business online, how then you can take advantage of very many free tools that are available via Google. Many people don't know about them, and she'll be telling us about them as we progress. First of all, it's just trying to understand, okay, so who's this who goes online anyway? Why do I need to be online? Tomorrow, Rosemary, what do you want to tell us about?
Trends in Kenya. What are the rising queries? What are the rising searches? How can you access these tools? They're all available to you for free at your fingertips. So I'll walk you through the trends and how to use them.
Asante sana. So we look forward to having this conversation with you again. Thank you very much, Rosemary Mumanyi Apio.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. It's 22 minutes after 9. Time for us to see what's happening skywards. It is still raining in all parts of the world, especially in Kinshasa, DRC.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmstar, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth.
Who doesn't love fuel that's good for your car engine and your pocket? Ola Energy cares about your car engine so much it has introduced Optimium fuels with additives that clean your engine and improve fuel economy at no extra cost, which enhances your engine's performance for a smoother ride for you and your pocket. Monique is away this week, so join me, Emmanuel Kisingani, on the Spice Drive from Monday to Friday to learn more about Optimium fuels and also stand a chance to win.
We're going to see highs of 22 today and lows of 14, but the rain is going to continue through most parts of the day, according to the forecast. In Nakuru, mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 21 and lows of 13. It's raining in Nyeri at 16. We'll see highs of 19 today and lows of 14. Partly cloudy conditions rule the morning in Eldoret at the moment at 15, highs of 20 and lows of 13, with showers expected through most parts of the day. Looks like a wet day throughout Kisumu, 22 degrees and mostly cloudy, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 18 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 16, with forecast reading thunderstorms for later. Mombasa is 29, that will be the high, lows of 25 with showers in the afternoon, where Malindi will be partly cloudy. 27 at the moment, highs of 29 and rain expected later. All right, out of Kenya into Kampala, it's 19 degrees and mostly cloudy, highs of 23 and lows of 19 with thunderstorms for later, and drizzles in Dar es Salaam. 27 degrees at the moment and partly cloudy with highs of 31 and lows of 23. In Joburg, it's mostly sunny, and those sunny conditions will last through the day with highs of 29 and lows of 15. It's clear in Lagos at 25. 31 will be the high and lows of 24. In Kinshasa, it is cloudy. We'll see some thunderstorms later, and it's going to be a hot day, highs of 31 and lows of 24. Moving on east in Beijing, it's mostly sunny at 13. Getting towards the end of the day, it's still sunny, highs of 18 and lows of 2. Paris is mostly cloudy at 11, highs of 16 and lows of 10, with showers expected later. London at 9 degrees, will be raining later, highs of 15 and lows of 9. And finally, for now, in New York, where it's Thursday morning, it's 14 degrees. It'll be a showery afternoon with highs of 17 and lows of 12.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, so the guy who forgot he was carrying vehicles on top his trailer, which was just a few inches shy of the bridge, has caused some major traffic this morning, and this is at the Delview flyover on the Thika Murang'a highway. So if you're headed in that direction, that's what's going on there, and it's going to take a while for those vehicles, for that vehicle which has other vehicles on top, to be moved. So if you're headed in that direction, that is what lies ahead. On Thika Road, then getting into the CBD doesn't look too bad. We've had some traffic on Kiambu Road and also right there at Muthaiga Corner, but that seems to be sorted out. Getting out of traffic hour now officially. Still a little bit of a bumper to bumper action on Mombasa Road, heading then out towards the airport and then into the city as well. Uhuru Highway then between Nyansarem Roundabout and Westlands today all the way through is giving some problems before you get into the CBD, but you should be fine thereafter. Okay, officially out of traffic hour, but going to see because of the rains, we'll see some heightened levels of traffic later, so please be careful, plan your routes ahead of time, and you should be fine. Spice FMKE on Twitter or on text 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Biggest conversation, the Situation Room. A report came out yesterday. It was released by Infotrack Research. What does it say?
Right. So what essentially is happening is that the governors are being graded. Okay. And if we look at all 47, we have number one being Kakamega with overall county performance. If we want to look at it, 57.2%. And then the lowest in terms of overall county performance was Tana River with 39.5%. However, what is bringing about the issues this morning is that the Kenyans have picked the top governors now, and the performance of county chiefs and the popularity with electorate can now be revealed in terms of this study that was done by Infotrack with Kakamega Senator Wycliffe Oparanya at 88.2%. And across the board, then followed by Salim Mvurya of Kwale County, Kivutha Kibwana of Makueni County, Anyang' Nyong'o of Kisumu County with 65.9%, 65.1% of Alfred Mutua of Machakos County, and on and on and on. This study, this survey, and its results has yielded some mixed reactions, whereby, of course, those on the bottom rail of this particular ladder don't like it very much. But let's look at the question. Respondents were asked, could you please tell me how you would rate the overall performance of your governor since August 2017 on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is extremely poor and 10 is excellent? That was the question that was being asked, nothing more than that. Now, what we saw after this was very many people saying very many things. And of course, the bitterness that we can, what we're going to call it, or the anger or the angst came from governor's quarters, whereby they said, I don't even understand this. Number one, a survey has come out and I have still received suggestions that if I wanted the results to be, more telling, that all I needed to do was pay a fee. And this is not the first time we've heard. When the same was done for MPs, members of parliament performances, just less than a month ago, we saw the same kind of anger that came about. And members of parliament asked the question, where is this from? If I can ask for a particular result, all I have to do is pay a little bit of money and I can get it. And so it is a bone of contention where many are complaining. Interestingly enough, those who've been called among the top 10 are not complaining. Those who are in the other areas are the ones who now really have an issue with this. Now, my point is today that, yes, we've talked about performance contracts before. We've talked about social contracts whereby you need to know the performance of people, and the people, in my opinion, at this point is who should grade their leaders. It is the people who should come out and say, this is truly what we feel, as opposed to a survey that can be skewed in one direction or another. If it can be manipulated, does it then really give a true reflection of what the people feel? It could be that we will hear this now. Meru County, the governor for Meru County, was explicit when he said, you know what, I have a problem with this because according to my people and even my MCAs in the assembly here are telling me something totally different. They're very happy with how I have operated. They're very happy with the progress that we have made in Meru County. It has not been seen in the last 10 years, the kind of progress we've made. So what kind of survey is this that would try to prove us wrong or otherwise? So, this morning, it is that truly the people who have never been privy to this kind of development and see it happening should be the ones who should say, without a shadow of doubt, we feel and we know that this person has performed and performed well so. As opposed to a survey, like we said, that can be bought or paid for.
So how do we present that information from the people?
That's the difficult
It happens
thing.
once.
I won't sit here and
It happens once every 5 years. There's one major opinion poll that's conducted called an election. If you're in office and people feel like you haven't performed, they vote you out. They bring in somebody else. So that could be one indicator.
It could be a way.
But during the course of your tenure, as we say that, yes, we'd like the people to find a way, find a means of voicing their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with their elected leaders. And then which is not manipulated by commercial interest or by any other political interest. It has to be a very independent way of the voice from the ground coming to the top. How do we present that? That would be the challenge. However, I see what you're saying in terms of, questioning the pollsters and questioning exactly what drives them and what motivates them and the commercial interest and how that commercial interest then overlaps with the greater public interest. When the first it's instructive to note that this report that has been released yesterday on governors, the question were asked at the same time as the questions were asked about MPs, and that report for MPs was released last month. These questions were being asked towards the end of last year. The poll was actually conducted last year, 2019, towards the end. The research company has taken the 9 to 10 months to then fine-tune the report and present it. When we asked Angela Ambitho, the CEO of Infotrack, why they, first of all, were releasing that report at the time when they were releasing the report for MPs, she said, there were a number of things that factors at play, even their own internally and operationally and strategically, that made them determine this is what we're going to do. But at the same time, she said that even before we released the report, we had already shown it to members of parliament. And the following day, it was being debated in parliament. It becomes a hot issue in parliament because MPs were saying, I was called by this research company. I was told this is what we have. However, we can conduct a deeper or other research. If you pay this amount of money, we can do another research. And they were not saying it explicitly, but what they were implying is that if you paid an extra amount of money for deeper research, then your ranking on this particular one that we are showing you would improve. And that is what that is the allegation that we're putting in front. The allegation that was being put forth by the governor of Meru County, Kiraitu Morongi, is the same. So, saying, I was asked to pay an amount of money so that then it can sanitize my position.
I was
and
even
I can
called.
jump.
I didn't ask.
You see, this is a different statement because he's saying he was called and he was asked. The other allegations are based on what? Implications.
No, the Laikipia Women's representative, Laikipia Women's rep, said she was called to the office. And she was told, okay, there's an amount that you can pay. We can do a further research that would be skewed in your favor. She said it on the floor of the House.
You know, I am still trying to wrap my head around the hoo-ha. You know, this is an opinion poll. Okay? And an opinion poll, by its very nature, can actually be skewed in your favor. One, just by asking certain questions or framing it in a particular way. All right? Now, if you are asking whether an opinion poll should by and large represent the truth, you need to ask yourself, first of all, what are opinion polls used for? What is their function really? What do we use them for? To give us an indication of what? Usually
to get a pulse.
Yes, and the pulse usually is a politically motivated pulse. Okay? In many cases, they try to talk about the popularity of a candidate. In some cases, we've even had situations where the polls have even been as bold. They've been bold enough to predict what they think will be the outcome of a presidential or a political process. Okay? Now, unfortunately, those who study these things have come up with, there are two similar phrases that explain a phenomenon that is actually very interesting when you deal with politicians. People say one thing, and yet in reality they go and do the complete opposite.
Right.
Okay? A black man, Tom Bradley, the Bradley effect as it's called, vied for the seat of governor. When the polls were conducted, a large majority said they would vote for him. When the election results came in, that was not the case. So people had said, when they were asked, because it seemed correct. And they also have something in the UK that they call a shy Tory factor. Same thing. People who say they are going to vote for the Conservatives and those who actually vote. Many said they are not going to vote, and yet they voted because the tally from the polls and what actually then was the outcome of the actual votes, there was a variance. Now, here, when a pollster talks to you and says, tells you literally, because this is what I'm not certain about, whether they said, we will skew it in your favor. Actually, they can. Polls can be skewed in your favor. Yes. They can.
It depends on the way the question is asked.
And also the population you choose to ask those questions of.
This is what I'm saying. Because now once you throw that into the basket and you give, because everybody then can go and decide they're going to pay how many X amount so that it can sound the way in which you want it to sound. So then it is not a true reflection of it's not a true reflection of the perception of the people.
Actually, it is.
No.
It is a true reflection of the people who were polled.
Yes, but now what we are saying is that we want to take everybody at once, giving the same information, find out what answer they would give you when you ask the same question, regardless of who feels what. And I'm saying if you want to really know how people feel about how their leaders have performed or how they've acted over the last however many years, ask the same question to everybody at the same time, which is why I
But
always
they usually do,
which
don't
is
they?
why yes, but then leave it at that. Don't go and prefer this extra amount for people to have it sound better or feel better for them. Leave it at that, because that's what we're having now. This is what they're having. We had somebody who said, I am ready to give evidence.
But you
to
see,
show
they said, have they given the evidence? They said, have they given the evidence?
Here is Kiraito Morongi, and this is what he said.
Let them look at the private sector. Let them look at InfoTrack. I'm ready to go there and give evidence. Like they were asking for 3 million. So that they can give us a better number. I will never give a single cent to them. Let me number 47 out of 47. They said, I'm not going to be governor of Meru. Let them be told Kiraito Murungi is the governor of Meru. Setani.
There you go.
So you did your survey. This is my problem. You did your survey, and as opposed to leaving it at that, look, survey here released, everybody understands exactly what the people actually felt. You then went further and said, okay, Eric, governor of County X, this is what it looks like. However, if you were able to pay, we can do another one where it makes you feel better, or we can, add some information. Then, CT might not be very happy with this thing. CT, if you pay this amount, we could. Why?
There's a possibility as well of something, okay? And this may not be criminal in nature at all, just because of how it's done. We have conducted this survey, and this is like a baseline survey. We asked people, what is it that you feel about your governor, your MP? Because they asked about all the 6 positions: governor, senator, woman rep, MP, not 6, 5, and the ward rep. And then people say, scale of 1 to 10, I'll rate my MP 7. Governor, 6. And we had a long discussion and debate about that. I mean, what does that mean? When someone says, I'd rate CT as 6, is it because you know CT? Is it because you like CT? Is it because of CT's performance, actual performance, and the job that you give him to do? Then that survey comes out. And you can say, this is what we asked. We just asked people, and it was just, and Angela Ambito told us, what we want is just that basic reaction. If I ask you to rate your governor today, 0 to 10, what would you say? That is clear indicative of what the feeling is on the ground, the sentiment on the ground. That can be one. And then the other bit is where you say, we have gone around the country, and this is what people are saying about you. We can conduct a further survey and ask them, what are the areas of improvement? We can ask now specific questions. If you can ask us, what specific questions? Maybe someone can say, no, go and ask them about the roads, because I know I've done a lot of work on roads. All right? And then the pollster can say, so we'll ask them about roads. Can we also ask them about health, about this and the other? But you know that the main thing that you want to know is whether people, how people feel about the projects that you've implemented. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that could be it. That could be, we have done this, and we can do a further survey on the ground to make you now feel and understand exactly how you can go and engage with your people.
If that was the case, it would be wonderful. But if that was the case, there's absolutely no problem with that. If what you have presented...
But that's the case.
No. What did Kiraito Murungi just say to you? What did we hear coming off the floor from...
heard.
What did they say? Who has even said, I'm ready to go and give evidence? Because look, by the time somebody opens their mouth and says something like that, they also have a right to be heard.
Asking me for 3 million shillings.
Somebody's asking me for this amount. If it was that, because there's nothing wrong with that. If I have done roads in my county and I have done it actually very well, then I would expect, or I would hope, that it is upon that premise that you should judge me. Or it's one of the factors that you should use to judge me. I do agree with that. However, it's presenting to you that, look, you have it seems that your number is not very good. It's not very palatable to you.
Yep.
We can make this number look better.
But is that what was said?
That's what he said.
No.
All those people, that's what they say. Look, it is in how the sales pitch is presented.
Thank you.
If you present your sales pitch, and in a way you also make it appear like, ukijipaka hii, my friend, utakuwa yellow. All right? Now, you can go back and say, I did not say that to ukijipaka, but that's what you said. At that particular moment, in order to close this sale, that is what you said. And somebody comes out there and says, but you see, they came and told me if I paid 3 million shillings, they can go and ask better questions, and then they can use that to improve my ranking. That is what. Nobody is saying, no. They asked me and I paid 3 million shillings and I was they had shown me I was number 275 out of 290 MPs and I still remain 275 after paying 3 million shillings.
Yeah.
Nobody came out to counter that.
Nobody came out to say that was not the case.
The research company itself is not saying the same. It's not saying that.
More importantly, if you are 88%, what stops you from moving it to 95?
To 95.
Yes. Have you heard someone?
I want to be number. Why is this guy above me?
Why am I 65? Can I not be 75? So that even if I'm number 10, but I'm 75, it means I've done something.
It's money that talks now. It's the money that talks.
Look, in a business environment, if someone makes a sales pitch, what I am hearing is people who didn't like the sales pitch. But it's being presented as though some wrongdoing, something wrong was committed.
It was It's
not a matter of not
it was
liking
a
the
skewed
sales
sales
pitch.
pitch.
At what point is
deliberately
it
manipulated sales pitch?
Sales pitches are manipulated by their very nature. That's what they do.
You don't tell lies in a sales
No,
pitch.
they don't tell lies, but they don't give you all the information either.
Now, here is a case where someone is saying that the lie was actually being presented.
I am saying that His Excellency, Kiraitu Murungi, may very well have heard what he heard, and what he's saying is absolutely true. Okay?
This is what he heard.
Yes, and it's absolutely
It could have
true.
been that is actually what was said.
There's a serious likelihood that was what was said. That what he has presented as having heard is what was actually said. But this is what I am saying. So long as we haven't heard what Infotrack have to respond to this, we have heard only one side of the story. That's point number one.
Yep.
I'm making points here.
Yep.
Not facts, just points.
One.
Point number two, Infotrack is a business. Now, what they do is conduct polls. Now, if you want someone to go and find greater details of what your citizens really think of your performance, it can't be one or two questions. It has to be many questions in very many aspects of what constitutes the work that is done within the county.
And that is time and resource consuming.
Exactly. But
And it has a cost element to it.
City, understand, this is not a different, a totally different survey that they're asking you to do.
It is a different, it's going to be a different survey.
Sure, but they're saying now if you want a better number to look before it was released.
You know where my problem? Let me
if
tell you
you
where my
want a
problem
better
comes
number on this same thing that we have done, we can do the research to skew it in your favor.
You know where my problem is? One, Mr. Kiraitu Murungi is not known to exaggerate things. It's not what he's known for. He's known to be a straight shooter. Not fairly, a straight shooter who speaks the truth.
No money was lost.
Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of very many other politicians. So when they say something, man, I take it with a dollop of salt. Because I say, that's what you're saying. That's what you heard. Now, I need to hear from the party who said it to know what did they actually say.
The problem now is that the party who supposedly did it is silent as a mouse.
So if they are silent, we interpret for her what she said.
No,
we interpret for them what they said.
No, but it cannot be that so many people are saying the same thing over and over and over again about this same behavior.
The issue, though, is that it's the same people of the same caliber.
Yes, and it's the same class of individual who are not known to speak the truth.
Including the straight shooter.
They are not known to speak the truth.
Including the straight shooter you've just talked about.
The straight shooter, in my opinion, from what I know of him, is not only a straight shooter, is known to be an honest person.
And he also has said the same thing.
Yes. Now I am
he
saying
has said the same thing like these other people.
Yes, but I am saying again, okay, why don't we deal with statistics instead of individuals, all right? Of the 47
counties,
how many people have complained?
One has complained so far. Wait.
In the public.
How many have come out publicly to complain? How many have had a forum to complain? They are meeting in Mombasa over the weekend, right? So let's see what they'll be saying after that meeting, during that meeting.
There's a point
that
I'm trying to make here. I would take these things a lot more seriously if a greater number than one complained, or a greater number than 2 or 3, because these people are they are many. And I would also take it a little more seriously if somebody who was say number 6 complained, as opposed to someone who's number 38.
Okay, let's look at a similar survey that was done, the one for the MPs.
Pause. Before you do that, let's hear from Brian, who's calling in from Nakuru and wants to contribute to this. Brian, good morning. Brian.
Morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
We are doing well in Nakuru. It's chilly.
All right.
And wearing face mask. COVID is rape.
Kabisa.
Take precautions. Okay, now to the point. You see, when you're in class, all of us, we target to get to be number one. Number last, I've been number last in my class, and it's not an easy thing being number last. So we are looking for a number one, and
doesn't it?
There's effort involved. But you know, as when you bring the results to the parents just checks which position are you, and that is what Kenyans are checking. Which position is our governor? So we don't know what to behind after that. We don't know. So I'll buy results.
So essentially, if thank you, Brian. Yeah.
Okay.
You can't go and face your parents with these results.
You'll buy results. Or even start saying, the teacher really doesn't like me.
Or my marks were transferred to somebody else.
The other day I asked the teacher a question, and because he did not know the answer, he now has a grudge.
And he picked on me and reduced my marks.
And that's why he reduced my marks. And that's why I'm number 35 out of 35.
And you see number 15, he's the one who got the marks which were reduced.
You were saying about the survey for MPs.
When we looked at the one for the MPs, we had it took over the entire afternoon debate in Parliament on the day that it was released into the media, into the public. It's not like two people had an issue. The entire proceedings for the afternoon session from 2 p.m. until about 6:30 was on this thing. And asking questions and saying, when we are looking at things like this that bring out a public opinion of your leaders, it must then be taken with more seriousness. Speaker after speaker stood up saying the same thing. It's just that we remember the ones that were a little bit more fiery than the others.
But like CT is saying, the number 1 to number 10 did not complain.
I said it too.
It is from number 2.
I said that you have to take it into consideration.
From number 11 to number 290.
The top 10 did not have a problem, have not had an issue with this. Interestingly enough, though, those who believe that Kivuda Kibwana should have been in the place of Oparanya have an issue. And I say, how can you? And these are people, constituents, who say, what do you mean?
It's a valid point.
What are you saying? That how can you say that he should be behind the other?
No, it is valid. It is valid. You see, Brian actually got it. He said it simply, but he got it. It's a scorecard.
Yep.
And we may debate it as much as we like, but the people in that county will look and say, hey, you mean to tell me this is the number? Huh? This is the number that this guy has brought for us.
Our governor is number 40.
Now, can you imagine those whose governor is 47? How do you think they think and feel?
Actually, who's governor number 40 and what county is it? We are counting number 0, and you are bringing us to number 40.
Now, imagine, if you want to understand these numbers, think of these numbers in a setting where you are 6 months to an election. You think these numbers will not play a part? Your enemies will point to the fact that this person, and they liken it to a school setting, which says, this guy seems to think that when you're 47 out of 47, you're doing well. No. Numbers here are not a question of quantities. Okay? The fewer, the lesser the numbers, the numericals, the better off you are. The truth is this. We come from an education system where number 1 was everything. That's why when you have an examination, when you have an education system that doesn't give you number 1 and 2, we have a problem adjusting to it. Because I need to know, what number were you? You said, no, you did well. No. How? Now, you take that into a political competition. We still talk so-and-so was number 1.
Sure.
We're now talking about number 2 will be a leader of the official opposition.
It's one, and that's it. So, winner takes all, right? I don't have a problem with, look, the person who was 47 or whatever, the person who is 33, they're smack dab in the middle. That's your issue. And you have to go and, because at the end of the day, it's based on people.
County number 004. Tana River.
Number last.
It's number 47.
As they would say. That's a Kenyan thing. Number last, right?
Yeah.
Now,
county number 001.
That's fine.
Where is it?
Once my problem is that once you throw in
number
this
34.
thing, that there's a possibility that before this thing was released, somebody who previously was number 40, by virtue of the fact that they paid some extra money for it to then change, they are now number 16. That's my problem. But that's the reality or the chance exists that this thing could have been skewed.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
When allegations emerge like this, then they raise the question and they start now poking at the credibility of such a survey.
And they should.
Yep.
And they should. But if you understand how polls are conducted and how it is they derive their information, it is not difficult to poke holes into any polls, any activity that involves polling. It's not
but
difficult.
you see, these are not just kawaida poll holes that you're poking.
Yes.
Polls that you're hooking.
Today's that day.
Eric, we've got it.
It's a Thursday.
Polls, yes.
Don't worry.
So, look, if you're questioning, I mean, why would you ask? Why did you pick these 13 indicators? The 13 indicators were agriculture, roads, trade, tourism, water management, environment, culture, sports, social services, and planning. You know, we can now start questioning. Or the way we ask. So when the question was asked, could you please tell me how you'd rate the overall performance of your governor since August 2017 on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is extremely poor, 10 is excellent? All right? You can question such kind of things. Here we are questioning this is after the transmission of the results, the opening of the server. Someone is telling you that I was told the server could be opened before the results get to Bomas, and my number could be changed. This is now an issue.
And then people start asking
because
questions.
it's the credibility of what you actually gathered on the ground.
Because somebody then could ask the question, okay, maybe number 15 actually was number 41. And maybe that person who was approached quietly removed the money and gave them and said,
some 3 million shillings goes in.
The possibility exists. And that's what I'm saying. You then operate within that danger that, okay, is then this thing credible?
Let's bring in a variable here, the respondent. Okay. We are a trusting people, but we also are suspicious people. Someone calls you, someone you don't know, and asks, because that's how these polls are conducted, to ask you these questions. You're not sure whether they're going to record you. You're not sure who has asked them to call you.
They're filming you from across the street.
And if your activities are some of the activities that can't stand very close scrutiny or are a bit adverse to bright light, then you will be very defensive in your responses. Okay? We once conducted, it was a research project among women who had high-risk lives in a low-income place, which people refer to as slum in this town. And there was one question that we used to ask, because they were sex workers. Do you use protection with your clients? There was 100% response, yes. That was the question. Okay. A year later, we'd have a baraza and we'd call them, and we would brief them as to the next phase of the study. It was a 3-year study. The thing that I noticed was that all these women, there were very many small children, more or less something like a year, just a year and less. So I thought, maybe some of the income generating projects that they had gotten into supporting and looking after small children. So when we got to talk to them, all these women, these children were their children. So that story of using protection
was a lie.
Was out of the window completely.
All right. No, the answer was, your question was whether they use the protection with their clients.
No, we actually asked the wrong question. We should have asked, are they clients with whom you do not use protection? And when we asked the question, they said yes. And they explained. They were someone called regulars. Okay?
You say client?
Regular. Because analipa rent, anafanya hivi, analetaka akanyama from time to time, that sort of thing. Now, that population of human beings, yes, was specific, but we are not that different when it comes to responses. They may introduce themselves and tell us what they're doing, but we are not going to tell them ever what we genuinely and honestly think. Hardly.
So even this poll can be, as it is in its entirety, could be false.
That's why I brought that. No, it is not false. It is not as informative as you would think.
Okay.
Yes.
How then would we protect credibility of such polls? This is not the first time an issue about polls is arising. Close to elections, in fact, they've even come up with regulations and laws that says you shall not conduct an opinion poll X months or X days before an election, because then that is skewing public opinion, right? Because the same politicians have felt, this guy, somebody goes and sponsors a poll to show, if an election were to be held today, who would you vote for as your MP, as your president? And then, because I've paid, come up with a result. And we say, we conducted a poll, and it shows that City Muga is the most popular candidate in Muhoroni. Boss.
You've got it. Do you really think that anyone who is contending and wants to be an MP in that area, do you think that they will be a hue and cry and fault will be found? Ask yourself this simple question. Every time we talk about polls, we talk about this one which was conducted last year. The results are being released now. Juxtapose it.
Imagine at that time, the governor of Bomet was still alive. I mean, they were talking about.
Yes.
Mike Movisonko had all the functions.
Thank
as
you.
the governor of Nairobi.
Thank you.
Things have changed now.
They
when
have.
releasing the results.
And secondly, there's something else that we need to consider. If we look at that particular period in time, I want you to look at the IEBC and delayed results transmission. How did people react? How do they still react?
Till tomorrow.
Yes, you
Open
mentioned
server.
precisely. So when it comes to verifying the authenticity of these things, my friend, is a subject of debate. It is always a subject of debate.
Which is why I say
Infotrack should open the server.
Yeah, but I think, Eric, you've understood it
they
perfectly.
should open the server.
They should.
Okay.
The very idea that money could have been paid for a better result, however, skews everything. It skews it in the minds of whether you were 11 to 47 or whether you were 1 to 10. Because then you should ask the question, hold on a minute.
If you
Even the person that was number one.
If you get a serious financial expert, you'll pay them money.
Abi.
And you'll be telling them what to look for.
All right. So just remind us today's proverb as we leave.
All right. So this debate of Paul's Niwache,
Chanandayo.
let me coil my tail and just read the proverb quietly so that we can go our merry way. When brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate. I am not going to fight so that I can inherit.
You want to inherit something?
That's it.
Okay.
Uninterrupted music between now and 3 o'clock, and then Emmanuel Kisiangani will be here to take you home on Spice Drive. And then the adults in the room much later. Have a lovely day. It's now 10 o'clock. See you tomorrow.